Chapter 38. This road is blocked. The White Lancelot became a roadblock at this moment. It was Tung Tang and the others who were rushing back to the headquarters to rescue Major, General Kates, and the others. Lieutenant Colonel, after their intentions were seen through, one of the subordinates who were regarded as the Four Holy Swords by the Liberation Front could not continue to fight, and the remaining three all had their eyes on Tung Tang. Can't you even do it in a fair and square battle? Tung Tang secretly sent a message to his subordinates while trying to use words to test Ray Minkai to find a breakthrough point. Kacha. The moment the hook pulled down the unlucky tree, Lancelot raised the laser vibrating sword in his hand again. Is this the extent of the legendary miracles? Tung Tang, we all know each other's purpose, so there's no need to waste any more saliva. As soon as he finished speaking, the Lancelot driven by Ray Minkai waved its two swords and took the lead to attack. Bang! A short distance of 5 meters was only a step away for both sides. In the blink of an eye, the laser vibrating sword in Lancelot's hand and the chain sword in the white-headed rogue's hand collided. However, this time was different. As Ray Minkai's finger moved, the frequency of the laser vibrating sword in Lancelot's hand increased to a new level. Ka. Under the increasingly powerful laser vibrating sword, the chain sword in the rogue's hand produced a discordant noise, and it was getting louder and louder. Even in front of Tung Tang's eyes, the crazily jumping red prompt was telling him that his mount was about to lose its sharp sword. My sword is actually no match for the enemy's sword. This thought flashed through Tung Tang's mind for a moment. 2 black shadows suddenly flew out from the rogue's left and right, forcing Lancelot, who was trying to continue the storm attack, to retreat. Chiba, Chaobainai, is that you? The 2 rogues flew out from the left and right of the rogue, driven by Tung Tang, firmly guarding his left and right. Lieutenant Colonel, let's attack together. As the only female pilot of the 4 Holy Swords, Chiba Nagisa suggested. Yes, Lieutenant Colonel, that white airframe is very strong. One of the 4 sacred swords, Chao Bainai, glanced at his silent comrade under the tree and said in a deep voice, "We still don't know the situation of a mortal wave. We have to end this quickly." All right, time was of the essence, so Tung Tang did not waste any more time. Had his aura changed? Are you going to go all out? Ray Minkai felt that the enemy in front of him seemed to have made up his mind. Suddenly, a murderous aura erupted from Lancelot's back. Ray Minkai snorted coldly. Lancelot turned slightly to the left and raised the energy shield on his forearm. Clang! The chain sword clashed with the energy shield once more. It was the 4th rogue. It turned out that the reason why this rogue did not meet up with Tung Tang was because it had circled behind Lancelot and launched a sneak attack. However, if the first sneak attack did not succeed, how could the second sneak attack with the same strategy succeed? A hint of mockery appeared at the corner of Lei Minkai's mouth as he pulled and pushed with his left hand. Lancelot abruptly swung his left arm and violently swatted away the 4th rogue that had launched a sneak attack like a mosquito swatter. Immediately after, the energy shield was retracted and the hook on his left arm shot out again. Target. It was the rogue that was slapped into the air. Bang! Just as the hook was about to hit the cockpit of the rogue, an orange-yellow lightning suddenly appeared and cut the hook in half. Tung Tang. The one who launched that attack was undoubtedly Tung Tang. Tung Tang, who had saved his subordinate in time, let out a sigh of relief and said in a deep voice, "Bo tribe, small tricks are useless against him. Yes, if you want to attack, then attack together. Although I'm not afraid of your sneak attacks, I'm still annoyed that you've come again and again. Come." Dust flew and Lancelot's figure suddenly disappeared in front of Tung Tang and the others. So fast. Chiba, he is on your right. Tung Tang was shocked and quickly notified his subordinates. However, it was already too late. Bang! When the broken arm that was still holding the chain sword flew into the air, the rogue that Chiba, one of the 4 sacred swords, was knocked back by the strong impact. In the end, she was protected by her teammates who had just arrived. Chiba, are you okay? Chow Bainai looked around cautiously and asked with concern. No, it's just a broken arm. It's just an arm. Qianyu wasn't too bothered by the fact that her mount had lost an arm. Whoosh! The sound of wind suddenly exploded from the forest. A red lightning suddenly appeared behind Chiba and Chow Bainai's mecha without any warning. Bang! At the critical moment, the orange-yellow lightning and the red lightning fiercely collided, and a gust of wind suddenly erupted from within. Good block. Tung Tang. Lancelot's attack was blocked by Tung Tang's mecha in time. Tung Tang remained silent. He only used his hands to test his skills. The white-headed rogue held a sword in its right hand and fought with Lancelot's radiation vibrasword for the defense line. Crack! 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 The chain sword made a noise again. Moreover, the high-speed rotating chain also showed signs of slowing down or even stopping. In the previous and current exchanges, the chain sword had far exceeded the limits of what he could withstand. MSV, Radiation Vibrasword. This was the Britannia Empire's first combat weapon. Before that, even the capital, which had an inexplicable and complicated relationship with the Britannia Empire due to the cherry stone trade, knew very little about it, let alone the liberation front of the guerrillas. Bang! It broke. After enduring the test of the radiation vibrasword's continuous attacks, the chain sword that had malfunctioned finally died. The moment the broken chain sword flew into the sky in front of Tung Tang's eyes, Tung Tang gritted his teeth and immediately threw the broken sword at Lancelot. Bang! The broken sword was knocked away by Lancelot again. In the next moment, Tung Tang drove the mecha and rushed to Lancelot with an unstoppable momentum. Bang! Bang! The two hooks in front of the rogue's chest popped out continuously and flew straight at Lancelot. It's useless. Lancelot raised his hands and blocked the radiation vibrasword in front of him. However, this was exactly what Tung Tang wanted. The two hooks suddenly changed their direction from flying forward to a slightly downward posture. In the blink of an eye, they wrapped around the radiation vibrasword in Lancelot's hand tightly. Opportunity! After seeing that his plan succeeded, Tung Tang did not miss the opportunity to shout, "Yes! Left! Right! Back!" Except for Tung Tang in front of Lancelot. The other three directions were all occupied by three of the four holy swords. Opportunity! It's coming. They drove their mecha, raised the chain sword horizontally, and drove the high-speed drive wheel at full speed, rushing toward Lancelot in unison. This attack. Finish you! They shouted in unison. Close! Close! Now that Lancelot's two swords were controlled by Tung Tang and could not move, the three of the four holy swords seemed to see the hope of victory. But, just as the three chain swords were about to stab Lancelot, Lancelot once again gave up his weapon. With a push of his arms, the two energy light shields opened again, easily blocking the stab from the left and right. And the stab from behind was dodged by Lancelot with a front somersault. What? He actually gave up his sword. The four holy swords, who returned without success again, looked at the empty-handed Lancelot in surprise, and the two radiation vibraswords inserted in the ground in front of the rogue driven by Tung Tang. Why? Aren't you going to attack? Rei Mingkai's voice was amplified by the microphone and sounded in the ears of Tung Tang and the four holy swords. His calm demeanor and confident voice that he had everything under control made Tung Tang and the others feel a sense of pressure. After receiving the new rogue that was improved from the old rogue, the combat strength of the Liberation Front would not be too different from the Britannia Army. However, the white mecha in front of them mercilessly destroyed their confidence. The strength of the Britannia Empire was far beyond their imagination. Ow! Suddenly, a sharp howl broke the silence of the forest and rushed toward Lancelot's side from a tricky angle. Bang! The result was the same as before. However, this attack made Tung Tang and the others breathe a sigh of relief, and they also felt at ease for the survival of their comrades. You're not dead yet? I have to say, your vitality is really tenacious. Lancelot's energy light shield was still shining. Raymond Kai's gaze fell on the rogue that was thrown out by Lancelot and fell into silence after crashing into several trees. He remembered that from the voice in the communication device, the pilot of this rogue should be a man who was slightly older than his age. Perhaps he was an old man. Hee, have you noticed my age? While walking, the rogue driven by Xian Bo had electric sparks jumping all over its body. Looking at its shaky appearance, it might fall to the ground in the blink of an eye. Xian Bo, you. Tung Tang shouted. No, Lieutenant Colonel. Only when all the 4 holy swords are present can it be considered the real 4 holy swords. No matter how strong the enemy is, the 4 holy swords, will destroy it. Xian Bo's hoarse voice revealed an unprecedented confidence. Moreover, he did not care that his declaration would be heard by Ray Ming-kai. Hee, good, very good, interesting. Amidst Ray Ming-kai's laughter, Lancelot took a stance. Come on, second round. Chapter 39. The blade was trembling, the high-speed driving wheels were roaring. The killing weapons built with the top technology and wisdom of mankind were fighting in the woods. Tung Tang, the man who was regarded as good at creating miracles by the Liberation Front, saw through Zero's intentions from the beginning and immediately took action. However, just as he was about to rush behind Cornelia, the White Knight appeared. The man with no name and only an English letter as a code name drove the body that far surpassed the new rogue and blocked their way. That was such a powerful body. That was such a superb driving skill. No matter how well Tung Tang and the 4 holy swords coordinated their attacks, they were unable to break through the man and the white body's obstruction. Bang! The sound of the blade being cut rang out again. Tung Tang took a closer look and realized that the rogue of the only female pilot of the 4 holy swords, Qian Yi, had lost her last weapon. That's right, whether it was the hook or claw or the chainsword, as long as the rogue could use a weapon, they would all die under the 2 red killing swords in Lancelot's hands. Although Tung Tang had successfully seized this pair of swords once before, Lancelot, who had super mobility, took back the pair of swords from the encirclement of the 4 holy swords in the blink of an eye. Holding the sword in hand, transforming into the Grim Reaper, waving the sword, reaping life. These words kept flashing through Tung Tang's mind. Lieutenant Colonel, Immortal Wave's rogue can't move. Chouth Benet shouted anxiously. Tung Tang controlled the mount to eject the last hook claw, forcing Lancelot to retreat. Only then did he have the time to pay attention to Immortal Wave's situation. The rogue driven by Immortal Wave was almost covered in electric sparks. As the first joint to malfunction, it was even more serious. If this continued, it was possible that it would explode on the spot. Immortal Wave, give up the body, eject, quick. But Immortal Wave still wanted to struggle and try to drive the plane to continue fighting, but an ear-piercing sound of metal tearing suddenly rang out. Creak! At the same time that a loud sound rang out in Xian Bo's ears, an extremely intense pain was transmitted to his brain through his nerves. Then, as if something was blocking his throat, he was unable to say anything. He could only force himself to lower his head and look at his body. There was a red metal object and a red liquid flowing quietly on it. This is my blood? As soon as this question appeared, the Immortal Wave fell into darkness. Immortal Wave! Tung Tang and the others shouted in horror. The only response they got was an explosion and a merciless claw that took their comrade's life. First one. Fresh blood slowly dripped from Lancelot's hooked claws. Raymond Kai's cold voice sounded at this moment. You actually dared to kill Xian Bo, Britannia. Bobu roared angrily. With a heart full of anger, he urged Rascal to swing his chain sword and charge at Lancelot. The orange-yellow lightning drew an arc in the air and rushed toward Lancelot's head. Bang! The sound of metal clashing could be heard. The orange-yellow lightning dissipated, and Rascal's head flew into the air. Lancelot, who should have been beheaded by Rascal, took a step forward, lowered his body, and waved his left arm diagonally upwards. Using the hook on his forearm, he chopped off Rascal's head. What? Bobu was shocked. The anger in his heart disappeared without a trace. He hurriedly drove his mech to retreat quickly. However, it was too late. Lancelot hurriedly waved his right arm. The hook on his right forearm immediately shot out and directly pierced through Rascal's left leg. Gotcha! Not good, Bobu shouted in his heart. However, he could only helplessly watch as his Rascal was pulled by Lancelot and fell to the ground, powerlessly struggling. The wind whistled. The dazzling sunlight was blocked by Lancelot. The red blade in his hand refracted a bewitching light. In the next second, this fatal red blade was Bobu's Terminator. How can I just die here? At this moment of life and death, Bobu gritted his teeth and used all his strength to control the mech to roll over. He tried his best to create a chance for the cockpit to eject. Fortunately, he succeeded. Bang! It was Tung Tang. The rascal he was driving was holding the chain sword left behind by the Immortal Wave machine. Tung Tang once again held the chain sword against the radiation vibration sword that was thrusting straight down. He still felt immense pressure. However, the only thing that made him feel gratified was that Bobu did not follow the path of the Immortal Wave and successfully ejected. Well done. After Lancelot somersaulted in the air, he stood fearlessly in the middle of the encirclement of Tung Tang and the remaining 2 Force Sacred Swords. I was just lucky to save my subordinates. It's not worthy of praise, Tung Tang said coldly. 4 Sacred Swords, 1 dead and 1 escaped. The remaining 2 Force Sacred Swords had long been suppressed by Lancelot and Ray Minkai in terms of morale. Now, not to mention ambushing Cornelia, even retreating would be a problem. Tung Tang Jing Zhilong. Once again, I request to have a showdown with your excellency. Tung Tang took a deep breath and once again made the request that was rejected by Ray Minkai. Still not giving up? Tung Tang, are your miracles really that old-fashioned? Lancelot slowly straightened his body and stood in front of the rascal without any defense. Ray Minkai's voice sounded jokingly. Miracle? It's just a battle of life and death. The rascal clenched the sword in his hand tightly. Tung Tang's eyes were filled with determination. As if responding to Tung Tang's determination, the remaining 2 Force Sacred Swords gradually retreated all the way to the edge of the forest. After meeting up with Bobu, who had successfully ejected, they looked over from afar. Humph. Is this your Bushido, Tung Tang? Tung Tang. Lei Minkai laughed mockingly. Perhaps. But aren't you also a knight? Tung Tang retorted. Knight? Hee hee. I've said it before. I'm not a knight. As soon as Ray Minkai's voice fell, Lancelot immediately rushed towards the rascal like a cannonball. The 2 radiation vibration swords crossed in midair, leaving behind a dazzling red trajectory. Tung Tang did not dare to be careless and increased the power of the chain sword to the maximum. He knew that even if the power of the chain sword was several times stronger, it was still not a match for the radiation vibration swords in Lancelot's hands. There was a huge gap between the 2 from the very beginning. Bang, bang, bang. An intense attack and defense began. However, the one attacking was always Lancelot, and the only one defending could only be the rascal. Wong. Ka. Wong. As expected, under the attack of the 2 radiation vibration swords, the chainsword left behind by the Immortal Wave also fell into a state where it could not withstand the attacks. However, Tung Tang did not give up. Instead, he clenched his teeth and waited for an opportunity. Suddenly, Tung Tang's eyes flashed. He saw it. He saw it. At this moment, Scoundrel clenched the hilt of his sword with both hands and steadily raised the blade horizontally. Holding his breath, he thrusted out a fatal blow that seemed to have gone through thousands of tempering and training to be able to make a peerless strike. Dang! The sound of metal clashing echoed in the forest for a long time. Did it hit? The 3 Force Saints' swords who were watching the battle looked in the direction of the rascal and Lancelot worriedly. Beautiful! Lei Minkai's voice of approval rang out. Thank you for the compliment. Tung Tang smiled, and his expression became relaxed. But I lost. As Tung Tang admitted defeat, The chain sword in the rascal's hand also broke into two and fell to the ground powerlessly. Just now, when Tung Tang controlled the rascal to stab out a fatal blow and was about to pierce through Lancelot's chest, Lancelot actually turned his left wrist in a strange way. At the critical moment, the radiation vibration sword blocked the chain sword. With a roar, the other radiation vibration sword followed closely behind and cut the chain sword. Lieutenant Colonel. As soon as they saw the rascal controlled by Tung Tang kneeling powerlessly in front of Lancelot, Chiba and Chow Bainai hurriedly rushed up. "Don't come over. Go!" Tung Tang roared. However, Lancelot's blade did not fall. Raymond Kai's attention did not seem to be on Tung Tang, who was defeated by him. Instead, he looked at the torrent that was still rolling down the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, the Sunderland team, led by Veretta, met Zero. Without a doubt, Jeremiah, who had been obsessed with the orange incident, immediately rushed up alone with a roar. Veretta frowned when she saw how he did not listen to orders, but she had no intention of stopping him. Instead, according to the battle plan, after giving orders to stop Zero and the others one by one, she used Jeremiah as the vanguard to gradually stop the Black Knight Regiment's actions. "Zero, come out. Fight me," Jeremiah goadballed, "fair and square. Only in this way can I wash away my shame." Jeremiah's roar suppressed the sound of gunfire in the blink of an eye and became the main melody of the battlefield. "Jeremiah? So it's you, Mr. Orange. But I don't have time to deal with you now." A trace of seriousness flashed across Zero's face hidden under the mask. The appearance of Veretta and Jeremiah hindered the Black Knight Regiment's next move. Moreover, if this continued, even if he arranged for the Red Lotus second style to go to the ambush site in advance, it would be useless. "What should I do?" "TSK. It would be great if someone could ambush Cornelia at this time." Suddenly, while Zero was thinking hard about countermeasures, a violent tremor suddenly struck. This is an earthquake?" Everyone in the Black Knight Regiment exclaimed. "Zero, do you still have a backup plan?" Sean quickly asked. "No, this is not a device I set up. This is someone else." Boom! Amidst the shock, a huge explosion blew up the hillside above the battlefield. Billowing smoke, soaring flames, and a scoundrel strolling out of the flames. Chapter 40. Dark red blood gradually flowed out of the bloody wound, gradually forming a pool of blood on the cold floor. Humans always make different choices at the most delicate of moments. Sisali lowered his head and looked at the pool of blood that was gradually spreading at his feet. After gently inhaling the faint smell of blood, he raised his head and looked at Major General Kates, who was once again protected by the armed soldiers. "General Kates, don't you think so? Monster, what the hell do you want?" Major General Kates looked at the beautiful nurse who was supposed to be standing behind Sisali as if he had seen a ghost. However, she suddenly waved her hand and cruelly killed the two soldiers beside her. That devilish figure wrapped in a pink nurse uniform, that cold and sexy face, but at this moment it had become as terrifying as a demon from hell. He saw that the white, jade-like hands had turned into two sharp swords that cut the two soldiers into 8 pieces in the blink of an eye. Humans, how could there be such a change? Monster? General, although I understand your feelings, don't you think it's very rude to say such words to a beautiful lady? Sisali bent down and picked up the suitcase on the ground. After looking at it for a while, he nodded. "Finest, do it. We don't have much time." "Understood, Doctor." The beautiful nurse, whose hands had turned into cold swords, bowed and rushed out like a cannonball. "Shoot! Quick! Shoot!" As soon as Kates sensed Sisali's intention, he immediately roared and ordered his subordinates to attack. Da-da-da! In the blink of an eye, bullets rained down on Sisali and Phoenix like a torrential storm. At first glance, the two of them were bound to die. However, the beautiful nurse, Finest, stopped in her tracks and flew back. She actually used herself as a shield and firmly blocked in front of Sisali. Then, she quickly She waved her arms that had turned into sharp swords at a speed that could not be seen with the naked eye. Da-da-da-da. Dang, 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 dang. The whistling bullets were actually unable to break through the defense of Finest sword, which left afterimages in its wake. No matter how loudly Major General Kates shouted for his subordinates to use their full strength, the firearms and bullets in their hands that could easily tear apart a human body in the past were powerless against Finest sword-like arms. Crack! Caca! The sound of a magazine being emptied suddenly rang out. Then, Major General Kates and the others were shocked to find that the guns in their hands were out of ammunition. The bullets that were fired earlier had already become a pile of metal waste at the feet of the beautiful nurse. How is this possible? Major General Kates. No, not only him, but even his subordinates stared blankly at the beautiful nurse who slowly put down her arms that had turned scalding red. Her body was completely unscathed. Devil. Demon. Suddenly, a weak-willed soldier threw the gun in his hand to the ground, cried in panic, and turned to run out. At this moment, the soldier's panic had become a terrifying infectious disease. Ghost! Ghost! This is an evil spirit from hell. In the blink of an eye, except for the soldiers who were still brave enough to guard Major General Kates, the other soldiers screamed in fear and scrambled out of the command center. Sigh, I really can't stand it. This group of ignorant humans. Finest, I'm sorry. I made you suffer. Sisali sighed and apologized to the beautiful nurse who was protecting him. No, this is my own choice. Doctor, you don't have to blame yourself. Finest shook his head. With a move of his feet, he rushed 3 meters away and pounced toward Major General Kates. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Dark red liquid splattered everywhere. The entire command center was dyed in a terrifying red. Clang! The blade that had killed the soldiers guarding Major General Kates was now resting on his neck. I caught you. General. Her cold and elegant face was calm. What do you want to do? The unique cold aura of metal and the smell of blood on the blade made Major General Kates' scalp tingle. He could barely think straight. Sigh, what do we want to do? Your Excellency, didn't we make an agreement from the beginning? I'll help you restore your country, and you'll help me complete the experiment. It's such a simple agreement. General, you've rejected our good intentions time and time again. Sisali shook his head and sighed. He took out a syringe containing an unknown liquid that flickered with a dark red light from his suitcase. Look, this is the miracle you've been waiting for. It's beautiful, isn't it? Miracle. Major General Kates gritted his teeth and roared under Finest blade. This is a miracle. It's just the power of the devil. The power of the devil? We're both leaders of forces, Major General Kates, but you're not as good as a little girl I know. She was willing to become a monster in order to obtain power, Sisali said as he walked toward Major General Kates, who was still struggling under Finest grip. Look, a miracle is waving at you. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold light flashed in Sisali's eyes. The syringe containing the unknown liquid was injected into Major General Kates' neck. As soon as the black and red unknown liquid entered Major General Kates' body, it immediately followed his blood vessels at a crazy speed and quickly occupied Major General Kates' body. In the blink of an eye, the moment Major General Kates' eyes were filled with the black and red liquid, Finest took a big stride and returned to Sisali's side. Doctor. Sisali, who had noticed a change in Major General Kates, nodded. Yes, it's about time. Let's go. Otherwise, we'll be caught up by that princess again. Sizzle. As Sisali and Phoenix left, Rear Admiral Kates, who was letting out a soundless roar, gradually melted. Tentacles extended from his inhuman body and plunged into the puddles of blood on the ground. A few minutes later, a violent tremor spread from this place to the entire mountain. Rumble. The hillside was overturned, flames soared into the sky, billowing black smoke swept across the sky. Amidst the raging flames, gigantic humanoid mechs, who were regarded by the Liberation Front as a force to be reckoned with, slowly walked out. They were like ferocious tigers released from their cages as they charged down from the mountainside. That's... Boom! Just as the two ND Division's pilots were about to make a move, they were blasted apart by the gigantic humanoid mechs. That's the Liberation Front scoundrels? Dalton looked at the scoundrels in shock. No, they had already surpassed Sunderland's scoundrels. Shrink the formation. The enemy's momentum is too great. We need to delay them here, so that the princess can adjust her strategy. Yes, sir. Under Dalton's command, the two ND Division's pilots quickly formed a defensive formation after suffering some losses. They barely managed to hold their ground against the scoundrels' charge. On the other side, the Black Knight and Veretta saw the change in the mountainside. Moreover, before they could figure out what was going on, the Black Wave had already reached them. That's the scoundrels. The Liberation Front sent out all their forces to counterattack? Zero was stunned, but he quickly realized that something was wrong. This was because the scoundrels had actually treated the Black Knight as their enemy. In the blink of an eye, the Black Knight was not only attacked by the Sunderland team led by Veretta and Jeremiah, but they were also attacked by the scoundrels that had charged down from the mountainside. Zero, retreat. If we don't retreat now, we're going to be attacked from both sides. Sean heard the screams coming from the communication channel and anxiously shouted, TSK, what are the Liberation Front planning? With such a force, why wait until now? Zero couldn't understand what was going on, but it didn't stop him from making the right decision. Black Knight, retreat. We'll leave this to the Liberation Front. Under Zero's command, the Black Knight immediately retreated. Jeremiah, who had been paying attention to Zero's movements, immediately rushed out of the formation when he saw the Black Knight retreating. Zero, are you going to be a coward again? Jeremiah, who was piloting the Sunderland, rushed to the back of the Black Knight and roared angrily. Hurry up and come back. Fight to the death with me, Jeremiah Godbold. Idiot. Zero didn't pay attention to Jeremiah and instead sped up his retreat. As the black scoundrels got closer, Zero felt a familiar and ominous aura. It was just like the Black Sunderland that night. Zero. Jeremiah roared angrily and chased after the black scoundrels. Jeremiah, behind you. Just as Veretta's voice sounded out, Jeremiah suddenly felt as if his body was pierced by an ice-cold feeling. Jeremiah lowered his head and looked. A dark red ice-cold sword pierced through his back, and there were even traces of fresh flesh on the sword. A fishy sweetness surged up his throat, and Jeremiah unwillingly let out a final roar. No! Zero boom! Following Jeremiah's final unwillingness, his Sunderland turned into a ball of flames. Jeremiah. Veretta stared blankly at the ball of flames that Sunderland turned into. Veretta. The shouts of her subordinates called Veretta back. Everyone reorganized the formation, retreat, and rendezvous with Lancelot at the fastest speed possible. In front of them, the Black Wave was like an unstoppable tsunami that swept across the entire mountain. Chapter 41. In an instant, the originally lush green forest quickly withered under the impact of the tsunami-like black waves. In the end, it headed towards death, leaving behind a barren mountain range that was filled with blood and fire. Your Highness, that is the unknown black body that Department Q mentioned. Gilbert stared in shock at the black wave that surged out from the gap that had suddenly been blasted halfway up the mountain. I'm afraid it is. Gilbert, inform all personnel to take turns to retreat to the second line of defense. What about Department Q? Cornelia did not hesitate to give the order to retreat while fighting. After that, she asked about Department Q's movements. Dalton just sent a notice saying that after Department Q told them to avoid the sudden flash flood, they turned to chase after the Black Knight Regiment. While Gilbert guarded Cornelia cautiously, he also told Cornelia all the information he obtained just now. Black Knight Regiment? Cornelia was slightly surprised. Oh, I didn't expect Kay to understand my arrangement. Not bad. After Cornelia praised him, She immediately turned to look at the surging black waves with a solemn expression. Gilbert, stop here. We have to get rid of these scoundrels. Otherwise, even if we can stand firm at the second line of defense, the G1 mothership will be threatened by the enemy. Yes, Your Highness. The black waves arrived in the blink of an eye. Cornelia led her personal guards fearlessly and charged head-on. They collided with the black waves formed by the numerous black scoundrels. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, a loud noise announced that the Britannia army led by Cornelia had entered a fierce battle with the black scoundrels. The battle has begun. Tung Tang stood up from the cockpit of the scoundrels and looked at the mountainside that was submerged by the surging flood. Thanks to the black waves that suddenly overturned the entire mountainside, Ray Minkai did not immediately kill Tung Tang after defeating him. Instead, he turned and left immediately to rescue his subordinates and Governor Cornelia. What kind of monster is that? We don't have so many scoundrels on the Liberation Front. Even though they were from different camps, they had the same thoughts. Veretta, retreat. A young knight at the back of the group roared. Before Veretta and the others could react, he turned his Sunderland around and charged towards the black rogues that were chasing after them. How did die? 11. The young knight roared and frantically pulled the trigger, firing all the bullets in the machine gun in Sanderlang's hand. Dang, 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 dang. The strange situation that happened not long ago appeared again. The whizzing bullet hit an invisible wall, and after a series of sparks flew in the air in vain, it fell to the ground powerlessly. However, the young knight who participated in the operation that night did not panic. Instead, he tried his best to remain calm, and the moment he ran out of bullets, he continuously fired the claws on Sunderland's chest. Boom! Boom! This time, Sunderland's attack was successful. Although I don't know why bullets are ineffective against you, Sunderland has more than guns. However, before the young knight could say anything, two black shadows suddenly appeared on both sides of the Sunderland that the young knight was driving. The wind suddenly blew. Creak! Two unpleasant sounds of metal breaking rushed into Sunderland's cockpit. Ugh, puff! The young knight's body was in pain, and he fell into eternal darkness. Walsh, Veretta, and the others could not stop the young knight from bravely sacrificing themselves. They gritted their teeth and continued to retreat to the predetermined location. Behind them, under the illumination of Sunderland's exploding fireballs, the black scoundrels were still rushing down the mountain. Veretta, we'll stop here. All of a sudden, before Valletta and the other knights walked too far, the knight in the back had stopped, which was out of everyone's expectation. Chad, what are you doing? Hold on a little longer. We'll be able to meet up with Lancelot. Then, under Kay's leadership, this won't be a problem at all. Veretta hurriedly shouted. I'm sorry. Veretta, they're too fast. Someone must stop them. Walsh, that bastard, is unreliable. In the end, I still have to complete this difficult mission. She was right. It had only been a few minutes since the black wave appeared. In these few minutes, the black wave rushed straight down and chased after Veretta and the others. If they did not stop them, Veretta and the others would become the victims of the black wave. At that time, let alone stabilizing the battle line, Veretta and the others would probably be buried in the black wave. Moreover, compared to Veretta and the others who had to consider the situation of the road when retreating, these black scoundrels could ignore any terrain and the obstruction of the forest. From the beginning to the end, they chased after Veretta and the others. I'm counting on you. Chad. Veretta, who had figured everything out, gritted her teeth and made the decision to abandon her teammates. Yes, my lord. Amidst the gunshots, the Sunderland, driven by Veretta and the others, crossed a small hill and disappeared into the forest. Not long after, there was another explosion. Boom! Under the billowing smoke, it was still the swarming black wave. Judging from the dense formation, the sacrifice of the two knights did not cause many casualties to the enemy. Even the time to stop them was not as long as expected. Veretta, please hold on. When the black wave appeared behind them again, the last knight, led by Veretta, chose to sacrifice himself. just like their colleagues who had sacrificed themselves before. Don't do anything stupid. Hold on. Boom. Before Veretta finished speaking, a violent explosion suddenly set off in front of them. This powerful explosion not only blew the surrounding forest into the sky, but also burst out a strong shockwave that swept across the surroundings. Veretta and the others were caught off guard and almost overturned their bodies. Amidst the billowing smoke and dust, 1, 2, 3, at least 12 black figures walked out of the smoke and dust and blocked in front of Veretta and the others. We're surrounded. This thought flashed through Veretta's mind. Veretta, we'll cover the rear. You retreat quickly. The remaining 2 Sunderland pilots shouted loudly. TSK, are we still going to run? Veretta gritted her teeth and controlled the landline to turn around, back to back with her subordinates. Hold on. Kay will come to save us. Buzz. The sound of high-speed driving wheels exploding swept across the air. This was the enemy's attack. Attack! Under Veretta's order, the 3 Sunderland immediately unleashed the strongest attack they could currently possess. But no matter how the bullets whistled, no matter how the guns roared, their attacks still had no effect on the black rascals. TSK. So it's a defense against firearms? Although Valletta did not know how it worked, she knew some of the key points after fighting with it many times. Take turns to use the hook and claw to force them back. Also, if there's a chance to kill them, don't hold back. Yes. Boom. Suddenly, a loud sound rang out from the black wave that surrounded Veretta and the others. That's... Veretta was shocked and could not help but be surprised. Boom. Another loud sound rang out. From the sound of the sound, it seemed to be getting closer and closer. Boom. After a flash of green and blue suddenly flashed in the black wave, there was a violent explosion and a deafening explosion. It's Lancelot's Vari's rifle. Kay is here. Under Veretta's surprised gaze, a white shadow leaped high from the black wave and flipped in midair. He raised the variable Vari's rifle in his hand and aimed at the black wave below, firing 3 consecutive shots. Buzz, 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 boom, boom, boom. In the explosion, Lancelot flipped in midair for a few rounds before landing accurately in front of Veretta and the others. Veretta, are you okay? Ray Minkai's voice came from the communication channel. Yes, Kay, the surviving Knight of Department Q, is here. The rest of the Knight sacrificed themselves to cover our retreat. Veretta sighed in relief and could not help but grieve. I understand. I'll now open the way for you to retreat. Leave the rest to me and Lancelot. Veretta, you guys assist G1 in defense. Ray Minkai knew that other than Lancelot, Sunderland would not be able to win against these black mechs. Yes. Lancelot raised the variable Vari's rifle in his hand again and fired 6 consecutive shots at the black wave that had just closed in. Boom. The moment the 6 dazzling balls of light tore through the black wave, Lancelot immediately turned into a white gust of wind. As he hung the variable Vari's rifle back on his waist, he wiped his hands on his waist and plunged into the black scoundrels with 2 swords in his hands. Swoosh. Broken hand. Swoosh. Broken foot. Swoosh. With a flash of the sword, the scoundrel in front of him was cut into 8 pieces. Go. Follow me. Ray Minkai drove Lancelot calmly and acted as the vanguard, opening up a retreat route for Veretta and the others to return to the second line of defense. Under Lancelot's rampage, Veretta and the others finally returned to the second line of defense safely. Veretta, help with the defense. Now I'll go save the governor. Ray Minkai glanced at the location of the G1 mothership and turned around to charge into the black wave again. Chapter 42. Asterisk rat-a-tat-a-tat. Asterisk machine guns were roaring. Asterisk boom. 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 Asterisk grenades were roaring. The 5 Gloucesters attacked while retreating to a 6-meter-tall boulder that protruded from the ground. Around them, the black scoundrels were like hungry wolves that had smelled blood. They swarmed over and completely surrounded the area. "Governor General, it's about time." Gilbert glanced at himself and his colleague's battered body before he opened his mouth to remind them. "Okay, then, get ready to break out." Cornelia nodded and said. However, the situation in front of them did not give them any possibility of breaking out. Whether it was the swarm of enemies or the condition of the bodies they were piloting, there was no favorable condition for them to break out. The only thing that could make Cornelia feel a little relieved was that the black wave that surged down from the gap halfway up the mountain seemed to be unable to continue. However, this had no effect on the enemies in front of Cornelia and the others. "Governor General, please stand back. Let's open up the path." Gilbert said the words that were expected, and there was a sense of resolution in his words. That was the awareness of sacrifice. "Gilbert, do you think I'm just a woman who hides behind a man and trembles?" Cornelia frowned and shouted coldly. Gilbert shook his head and said from the bottom of his heart, "No, Governor General. Her Highness is our light, our supreme Valkyrie. How can she be an ordinary woman? However, if Her Highness is sacrificed on the battlefield now, then Her Highness Euphemia's situation will become serious." Gilbert said something that made Cornelia have no choice but to accept their awareness. "Your Highness, now not only are there nobles in District 11 in the way, but there are also these strange bodies lurking. For District 11 and for Her Highness Euphemia, please forgive us and accept our awareness." "Gilbert, you." Cornelia was stunned. In the end, she had to clench her teeth and accept Gilbert's suggestion. "Thank you very much. Our princess." When Gilbert saw that Cornelia no longer had any objections, he shouted loudly, "Knights who follow Her Highness Cornelia, now is the time for us to present the princess with unparalleled glory. Are you guys ready? All hail Britannia! All hail Cornelia!" Amidst the knights' loud cheers, for purple-painted Gloucesters surrounded the long-horned Gloucester piloted by Cornelia, forming a prismatic assault formation. "Knight, break out!" As Gilbert, who was at the tip of the triangular formation, gave the order, the 4 Gloucesters that surrounded the long-horned Gloucester activated their high-speed drive wheels. They raised their knight's lance and charged straight towards the area where the black wave was relatively weak. "Attack! Attack! Don't stop! Even if we die, we must send Her Highness Cornelia, our princess, back to Her Highness Euphemia's side." The Gloucesters continued to fire and shoot grenades. They raised their knight's lance and pierced through the black scoundrels. Asterisk boom, boom, boom. Asterisk amidst the explosions, amidst the billowing flames, amidst the smoke rising into the air, behind the Gloucesters were wreckage and grayish-white sand that covered the ground. However, no matter how brave the knight, who was determined to die, they could not scare off the enemy that surrounded them. After all, during this short exchange of blows, Gilbert and the other knights, who had been through many battles, were able to see some clues about what was going on. The enemy, the pilots of these black scoundrels, did not seem to be human. Suddenly, a scream came from the Gloucester that was protecting Cornelia. "Pastor!" Cornelia was just about to stop, but she was stopped by the Gloucester's pilot. "Don't stop. Your Highness, leave this to me. This is my final battle. Your Highness, please leave quickly." A corner of the Gloucester's cockpit was cut off by a blade, revealing a corner of the cockpit. Cornelia could see from this gap that the pilot named Pastor had a pale face. He gritted his teeth and endured great pain. His left arm, together with the corner of the cockpit, was cut off by the enemy's sword. "Go, Gilbert. I'll leave Her Highness to you," the knight named Pastor roared. As blood splattered from the wound on his left arm, he turned his Gloucester around, raised his Gloucester, and plunged into the group of enemies that were chasing after them. The next moment, a dazzling light bloomed. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, the powerful energy shock wave released by the cherry blossom's self-destruction scattered the black waves that were chasing after them. For a moment, they could not gather again to chase after Cornelia and the others. "Chance! Quick!" Gilbert gritted his teeth and shouted with a hoarse voice. Even if they had been prepared beforehand, when it came to their comrades sacrificing themselves, they still felt a little reluctant. Thanks to Pastor's sacrifice, Cornelia, Gilbert, and the others did not face any more obstacles when they tried to break out of the encirclement. However, in order to ensure the speed of their breakout, Cornelia eventually took over Gilbert's position and personally opened up a path for everyone to break out of the encirclement. They killed along the way. Cornelia, Gilbert, and the others were almost numb. Even if they had already made a name for themselves in the Middle East and Europe's battlefields and achieved many military achievements, this was the first time they had killed so many people. The enemies, it was as if they could not kill all of them. After they killed one batch, another batch would come. If it were not for the changes in the surrounding terrain and the withered trees, Cornelia, Gilbert, and the others would not have realized that they had already charged a large distance away from their initial position of breaking out of the encirclement. Your Highness, hold on a little longer. We are about to succeed in breaking out of the encirclement. Seeing that they were about to break out of the encirclement, Gilbert could not help but feel energized. At that moment, a sudden change occurred. Asterisk bang, sizzle, bang. Asterisk in the midst of a burst of electric sparks, the Gloucester's knees continuously exploded to different degrees. It seemed to be a malfunction caused by the impact when they were breaking out of the encirclement just now. However, the timing of the explosion was really not right. Moreover, the Gloucesters that had this malfunction were actually 3 Gloucesters, including the Longhorn Gloucester that Cornelia was piloting. In other words, other than Gilbert's Gloucester, the other Gloucesters were unable to move because of this malfunction. Gilbert gritted his teeth and immediately shouted, "Your Highness! Your Highness! Please use my Gloucester to break out of the encirclement immediately. We will stay here and cover your retreat." Gilbert, asterisk boom, asterisk suddenly, a faint blue light flashed and disappeared, causing an explosion in the black wave. Amidst the smoke and dust, a white knight came with the wind. "This is Lancelot." The K. Cornelia and Gilbert shouted almost at the same time. "Governor General, I am here to provide support under the orders of Deputy Governor General Her Highness Euphemia." When Lancelot put away the variable Vari's rifle in his hand and replaced it with 2 radiant vibration swords, Raymond Kai's voice was transmitted to Cornelia and the others through the communication channel. "Kay, it really is you." Although Cornelia was a little surprised, she was soon relieved. After all, in the previous battle arrangements, the talented Ray Minkai was deliberately ignored by Cornelia because she wanted to see how far Ray Minkai could go when he was not bound by battle orders. The results satisfied Cornelia. "Governor General, please follow me." As Ray Minkai spoke, Lancelot, who was piloting the Longhorn Gloucester, tore the 3 black scoundrels into pieces like a whirlwind. "Wait, Kay, Her Highness and their Gloucester cannot move." Gilbert quickly informed Ray Minkai of the situation. "What?" Ray Minkai was stunned and looked over subconsciously. Indeed, the Longhorn Gloucester's left knee had been blown up and could no longer provide any help to the Gloucester's operation. "Sir Gilbert, I'm sorry. You can pilot the Gloucester and lift it up. Let's go together. I will lead the way in front." While stopping the black scoundrels from surrounding them, Ray Minkai suggested another method. "Yes, this is the only way. Sus, Ipa, both of you try this method too." Cornelia did not allow Gilbert to refuse and gave the order forcefully. "Yes, Your Highness." Ray Minkai's method was effective. Even though he couldn't increase his speed to the maximum, it was much better than being unable to move. Especially with the support of the powerful combination of Lancelot and Ray Minkai, any black scoundrels that surrounded them were turned into white ashes under the attack of the Radiant Vibra Sword and the variable Vari's rifle. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk suddenly, a series of loud and dense roars came from the sky. This sound? Is it the Air Force? Cornelia listened carefully and said in surprise, "The Air Force has been deployed? Is it the Deputy Governor General?" Gilbert asked subconsciously, but soon he realized that he had misspoken. "No, Gilbert, the Deputy Governor General is right. However, Cornelia did not have any negative feelings towards Euphemia because of this. Instead, she felt that her younger sister had finally grown up. Governor General, Veretta and the others are here to receive us. Lancelot, who was leading the way in front, sent a message. Then, countless artillery fire swept across the sky and landed densely on the black wave blocking the path in front of Lancelot and Gloucester. Asterisk boom, boom, boom. Asterisk the black scoundrels that gave Cornelia and the others a headache were all drowned out by the justice that fell from the sky. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk under the artillery fire that covered the mountains and plains. The Air Force's planes came from afar and from small to large in formation and arrived above the mountain. In the blink of an eye, large and small bombs poured down. Chapter 43. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the sky was filled with iron wings as the sky was filled with clouds. Heavy steel bombs with the theme of aviation bombs were thrown down from the sky towards Nerita Lianshan as if they were free of cost. Asterisk boom, boom, boom. Asterisk following the whistling sounds of the aerial bombs falling from the sky. Countless fireballs blossomed on Mount Lien like 100 blooming flowers. The insufferably arrogant Black Tide finally suffered a setback under the astonishing aerial bombardment. They had no choice but to stop their pursuit of Lancelot and Gloucester, who had seized the opportunity to break out of the encirclement. Phew, Your Highness, we have successfully broken through. Hearing the roars and feeling the tremors from the ground, Gilbert finally let out a long sigh of relief. Finally, they had succeeded in breaking through. Yes, this is all thanks to Pastor, Gilbert, and Kay's hard work. Thank you. Cornelia's solemn expression faded a little. She opened the communication channel and spoke. No, this is what the guards should do. Gilbert and the remaining 2 knights expressed their opinions. Yes, I was only ordered by the deputy governor to provide assistance. This is not something to be praised, Ray Minkai said modestly. Is that so? Cornelia smiled. She did not dwell on the modesty of her guards and Ray Minkai. At this moment, the communication channel from the G1 mothership was connected. Sister Royal, Governor, are you okay? The first face that appeared on the screen was Cornelia's beloved sister, Euphemia. No, Deputy Governor, I'm fine. Although we lost a knight, we were able to break out of the encirclement with Kay's help. Cornelia nodded and briefly explained the situation. Then she shifted the topic to the bomber group that was bombing Nerita Lianshan. Deputy Governor, did you order the Air Force to attack? Yes, Governor. Those unusual rascals have caused a large number of casualties in our army. If it weren't for Dalton's timely order to retreat, the 2nd Regiment would have been wiped out. Euphemia's face was solemn. From the looks of it, the black wave formed by the strange scoundrels had indeed put a lot of pressure on the G1 mothership. Well done. We'll talk about the rest when I return to the G1 mothership, Cornelia said and walked out of Gloucester's cockpit. Gilbert, have someone repair Gloucester as soon as possible. We might have to attack again later. Your Highness, are we still going to attack? Gilbert was stunned for a moment before he quickly asked. Cornelia's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Yes, the Air Force's bombing was only to eliminate the rogue that had left the underground base. In order to completely solve these problems, we have to personally enter this liberated base. With that, Cornelia turned around and looked at Lancelot. Don't you think so? Kay, the establishment of Department Q wasn't just for the Black Knight Regiment. You should understand this very well. As Lancelot's cockpit opened, Ray Minkai also walked out. Yes, Governor. Those black rascals are indeed very similar to the Black Sunderland that we fought before. But as for the specifics, we need to go inside to know. Go and prepare. Next, Lancelot will be the main combat force. Although this will be a tough battle for you, at the moment, only Lancelot's equipment can be lethal to the enemy. Cornelia said the idea that she had long decided on. Yes, Your Highness. After Cornelia left, Ray Minkai asked Royd and Sayer, who had rushed over, to bring Lancelot to the rear to prepare. At the same time, he stood at the second line of defense that had been established and looked up at the mountain that had become a sea of fire. In the flames, the black rascals that had been blown into countless wreckage turned into ashes at the speed of the naked eye. Even if the black rascals were still pouring out of the gap, under the continuous bombardment of the air, there was no way to break through the sea of fire that spread from the foot of the mountain to the top. The roar of the air bombardment was like a thunderstorm, constantly reverberating back and forth in the valley. 3 days. No one thought that the aerial bombardment that Deputy Governor Euphemia had summoned with an urgent order would last for 3 days. From the moment the aerial bombardment began, the bombers stationed at the air base in the concession took off without stopping. They arrived at the sky above Chantianlian Mountain to bomb, return, land, resupply, and take off again. This series of aerial bombardment made the pilots of the bombers relive the taste of extreme combat once again. The result of their extreme combat was that the mountain that was used as the base camp by the liberated front was bombed into a desolation, full of potholes. Moreover, looking at the top of the mountain, one could clearly feel that the mountain was much shorter than 3 days ago. That was because under Cornelia's follow-up order to contain the black rascals' footsteps in the gap at all costs. Under the order, tanks, heavy artillery, and bombers in the sky all turned their firepower to the maximum. They madly used their ammunition and plowed the mountain back and forth several times. Rumble. After completing the last round of bombardment, the bomber group circled around Chantianlian Mountain a few times and returned to the air base in a neat formation. On the surface, Gloucester, who had been repaired, regrouped under Cornelia's command. This time, it was not a large-scale operation. Instead, it was a cleanup operation deep in the enemy's camp. Therefore, the first wave of cleanup team was composed of the elite knight that Cornelia could find. Ray Minkai and his assistant Veretta were also among them. Veretta, when we go in later, follow behind the governor. Ray Minkai glanced at the gap that still looked particularly deep under the illumination of the flames and said to Veretta, "Yes." Veretta didn't ask why, nor was she pretentious. She simply responded. As a female soldier, she naturally knew what she should do, and she also knew Ray Minkai's intention. "Okay, are you ready?" Cornelia's communication was connected to Lancelot's cockpit. "Yes, the preparations are complete," Ray Minkai replied. "Then let's go." Ray Minkai nodded. Lancelot took the lead and rushed toward the gap along the path opened by the engineering corps in advance. Lancelot, who was moving at full speed, didn't wait for Cornelia and others behind him. Instead, under the control of Ray Minkai, he plunged into the deep gap. Puff! As soon as Lancelot stepped into the gap, Ray Minkai suddenly heard a soft sound, but when Ray Minkai listened carefully, he didn't find anything wrong. "Okay, what's the situation?" Cornelia, who was following behind him, immediately asked Lancelot, who was still standing at the same spot after entering the gap. "No, nothing. Just a little surprised." Yes, whether it was Cornelia or Ray Minkai's speculation, they would be attacked by the enemy the moment they entered the gap. But the situation in front of them made Ray Minkai and Cornelia feel a little surprised and puzzled. Not only did the expected attack not happen, but they didn't even see the shadow of the enemy. Other than the darkness in the entire passage, there was only dead silence. It was a dead silence that even the burning flames outside the gap couldn't illuminate. "Okay, you're in charge of the main passage in front. Gilbert, you'll assign people to investigate the other secondary passages. The rest of you, follow behind me and advance gradually." Yes, Ray Minkai naturally couldn't ask for more from Cornelia's order. For some reason, the closer he drove Lancelot to the central area of the fortress, the more an indescribable tremor appeared in his mind. It was as if something was being attracted by a certain aura and was gradually breaking out of its cocoon. Who is it? Doubt arose in Ray Minkai's heart. If the mysterious white cat hadn't fallen asleep, it might be able to give him an answer. But there was only Ray Minkai in front of him. He carefully moved closer to the central area of the fortress. In the darkness, The White Knight Lancelot held the radiation vibrasword in his left hand and the variable Vari's rifle in his right hand. He carefully followed the main passage into the central area of the fortress. Asterisk crack. Asterisk a stone was rolled over by the high-speed driving wheel and made a shattering sound. Asterisk bang. Asterisk suddenly. A red light burst out from the depths of the passage. Oh no! Ray Minkai was shocked. He quickly controlled Lancelot to squat and extended his left hand forward. He opened the energy light shield at a 45-degree angle. Asterisk buzz. Asterisk a deafening roar formed by the energy impact swept out like a tsunami along the tunnel behind Lancelot in the blink of an eye. A powerful airwave, a shocking roar, and an unknown energy impact that was so strong that Ray Minkai had to use all his strength to resist with the maximum output of the energy light shield. Asterisk boom. Asterisk an explosion. It still happened in the end. An even more intense airwave. A deafening roar. And the terrifying energy attack that blew Lancelot away, causing him to tumble several times in the air and land on the ground in a sorry state, barely maintaining the balance of the body. Z, 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 in the smoke and dust. The energy light shield on Lancelot's left forearm was jumping with electric sparks. It seemed that it wouldn't be able to last long. That attack just now almost forced out Lancelot's new trump card, the energy light shield's overload. However, Ray Minkai didn't feel depressed because of this. On the contrary, at this moment, Ray Minkai's heart was burning with anger that even he himself didn't know where it came from. And, at this moment, a name suddenly appeared in his mind and occupied his mind. A name that completely ignited the fire of his hatred. Through the light caused by the energy impact just now, a huge and ugly figure, a sinful and ominous aura, appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Asmodai, the White Knight, let out a roar full of anger. Chapter 44. Its arms were almost as big as Lancelot's. Its body was almost as big as a hill. Its huge pupils were flowing with fluorescence like flames. Its tall, cold metal barrels were shining with cold light. And its huge fangs extended from its chin, pointing straight to the sky. The huge and terrifying monster in front of him was the incarnation of the name that appeared in Ray Minkai's mind. Asmodai. Ray Minkai, who roared out this name from his chest, didn't know the meaning of this name. But, as this name was roared out by Ray Minkai, some fragmented images also appeared in Ray Minkai's mind. This was the memory fragment that once surprised Ray Minkai, but also helped him out of his predicament at the critical moment. Yes, it can't be wrong, but these memory fragments didn't seem to be from the world Ray Minkai was in, but from a strange, yet very familiar world. Among these memory fragments, what Ray Minkai cared about the most was the monster that looked exactly like the huge and terrifying figure in front of him. Asmodai. This time, Ray Minkai finally knew the origin of this name and the meaning of this name. In the memory fragments, this huge and terrifying monster was besieged by steel beasts ranging from 10 to 100 meters tall. It lowered its head and put down the 4 terrifying and cold barrels on its back. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the steel beasts that launched a frontal attack on this monster were all annihilated by the energy beams that burst out from the 4 barrels. Asmodai, one of the monsters that destroyed the world? With the recovery of the memory of Asmodai, Ray Minkai finally knew how terrifying the monster he was facing now was. Although it was different from the terrible monster in his memory. When facing a monster with a huge body of nearly 50 meters tall, that heavy pressure always inadvertently pressed on Ray Minkai's heart. In particular, the energy attack that Lancelot had barely managed to block with all his might had clearly come from the 4 terrifying cannons behind him. Roar! The monster named Asmodai was roaring. It has already discovered Lancelot's existence. Ray Minkai was shocked. He immediately drove Lancelot to jump to the left wall. At the moment of relay, he raised his right hand and shot out a claw. Buzz! The moment the steel cable connected to the claw was retracted, a huge and dazzling energy beam brushed past the bottom of Lancelot's left foot. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the solid wall that supported the entire underground quickly melted under the energy beam until it was penetrated. Rumble! The moment when the energy beam reached a critical value, an explosion. The whole mountain was shaken by this unreasonable explosion. Gravel continued to fall from the dome, and cracks rapidly spread in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. If it was said that the 3 days of continuous bombardment had damaged the mountain, then this attack from the monster named Asmodai was the final straw that pushed the mountain into the abyss of destruction. Kacha! The spiderweb-like cracks wantonly tore apart the dome of the underground base, throwing pieces of broken stones down. In just the blink of an eye, the gigantic and terrifying monster was easily buried by the rubble that fell from the ceiling. However, Lei Mingkai did not heave a sigh of relief because of this. Instead, the expression on his face became even more serious. He knew that this Asmodai definitely wouldn't be destroyed so easily. But right now, Lei Mingkai had to face an urgent reality. If Lancelot continued to stay here, even if he didn't die in the hands of the monster, he would still be buried by the broken roof. Lancelot retracted his claws. The moment he landed, he burst out with his fastest speed and charged along the path he came from. Along the way, even if he saw broken rocks blocking the path, Lei Mingkai decisively controlled Lancelot to raise the variable Vari's rifle in his hand and wildly shoot. Boom! 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 Broken rocks flew everywhere. Smoke and dust billowed. The White Knight raised a gust of wind, plunging into the billowing smoke and dust, and madly dashed towards the exit as countless broken rocks and debris fell. K. This is Veretta. Answer if you hear me. While dashing, Lei Mingkai heard Veretta's communication. This is K. Veretta, are you guys okay? Also, how is the governor? Lei Mingkai glanced at the situation displayed on the left and right screens. At this time, the main passage behind Lancelot, in addition to the billowing smoke and dust, was a broken road buried by countless broken rocks and debris. This situation made Lei Mingkai worried about Veretta's situation. The governor is safe now. When the explosion happened, we were still close to the exit, so the moment the collapse happened, we retreated in time. Veretta breathed a sigh of relief and explained the current situation. Is that so? That's good. Lei Mingkai nodded and then said, let me talk to the governor. There's an emergency. It's me. Kay, tell me what you saw. It seemed that she had been waiting for Lei Mingkai's communication from the beginning. As soon as Lei Mingkai spoke, Cornelia immediately joined in the communication. Yes, Governor. Now, in the depths of the Liberation Front headquarters, there's a monster. I'm afraid it's the real culprit that triggered the Black Wave 3 days ago. What? Monster? Obviously, Cornelia was a bit, no, it should be that she couldn't believe and accept Lei Mingkai's words. This is absolutely true. Governor, I'll tell you the details after I successfully escape. Seeing that the exit was in sight, Lei Mingkai directly turned off the communication and drove Lancelot with all his strength for the final sprint. Boom! Suddenly, the rocks above the exit cracked. In the midst of the dust, a few huge rocks with a diameter of at least 3 meters suddenly collapsed and blocked the exit. TSK. Doing this at the last moment, Lei Mingkai's eyes flashed coldly, and he turned the variable Vari's rifle in Lancelot's hand to the maximum power. In the instant of a long, trembling explosion, the dark green light from the muzzle of the gun pierced into the huge rocks blocking the exit, and an explosion occurred. Boom! In the smoke and dust, Lancelot, who had raised the energy light shield, broke through the smoke and dust and steadily landed on the hillside. The road behind him that was blown up was once again buried by the huge rocks that fell from the top. Kay, over here. Veretta, who was waiting on the flat ground not far away, hurriedly called out to Lei Mingkai. However, at this moment, an even grander and more destructive geological disaster occurred. this headquarters that the Liberation Front had high hopes for, hoping to use as a starting point. Chengtian Lianshan, in an earth-shattering explosion, collapsed. The smoke and dust that filled the sky soared into the sky. The violent tremors could be felt clearly even from tens of kilometers away. In the sky, in the forest, they were all frightened and frantically flapping their wings, moving their limbs to escape in all directions. It actually collapsed just like that. As a soldier, Cornelia knew very well that this headquarters base that the Liberation Front had high hopes for would not collapse so easily after 3 days of continuous bombing. Could it be that it was really like what Ray Minkai said, that there really was a terrifying monster in this base? Soon, a huge and terrifying figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes amidst the storm of debris and dust that scattered everywhere in the air. It was a black monster that was almost 50 meters tall, and even the nightmare that made the Britannia Empire dominate the world looked like a helpless and laughable baby standing in front of it. Is there really such a terrifying monster in this world? Gilbert stared blankly at the monster that appeared amidst the smoke and dust. Asmodai, that is its name. Governor General, we must immediately launch an attack. Otherwise, when it reacts, it will be the time of our death. Ray Minkai, who knew how terrifying Asmodai was, drove Lancelot and turned into a white whirlwind. He did not care about the threat of the rocks that kept rolling down from the collapsed mountain peak and rushed towards the black monster. All troops, listen to my orders. That is the enemy. Attack. Although Cornelia still had some doubts in her heart, after seeing the terrifying monster's true appearance, she had no choice but to put down her doubts. Boom, boom, boom. The first wave of attack before Lancelot launched its attack came from the armored brigades stationed on the plains at the foot of the mountain. During the 3 days of bombing, these armored brigades also played a part. Now, at the moment when they thought that their combat mission was over, the armored brigade once again welcomed a new mission. That was to bombard the monster that suddenly appeared on the mountain. Streaks of orange-yellow light continuously shot out from the barrel. With a sharp whistling sound, they broke through the air and drew a slight arc in the air before fiercely crashing into the huge and terrifying black monster. Boom, boom, boom. There was an explosion of fire. A ball of fire bloomed. The impact caused by the explosion of the cannonballs caused the black monster's body to sway slightly. Then, the black monster turned its head slightly, as if looking at the armored brigade at the foot of the mountain. Whoosh hiss! A sharp whistle broke through the air. Boom! The cannonball that made the whistle pierced the face of the black monster. Suddenly, the ball of fire caused by the explosion drowned the face of the black monster. Did it succeed? A hint of surprise flashed in Veretta's eyes. However, the next moment, four huge and dazzling lights broke through the ball of fire, cut through the sky, and swept straight towards the armored brigade at the foot of the mountain. Boom! In an instant, the armored brigade was completely wiped out. Chapter 45. A huge crater. Metal fragments were scattered all over the place, and the remains of the limbs that were drowned in the flames, all of this. Everyone who had witnessed with their own eyes how the armored brigade, which had been occupied by the armored brigade, had been destroyed in an instant. Everyone could feel the shock that made their souls tremble. There is actually such a terrifying attack. Cornelia looked coldly at the huge crater where the remains of the armored brigade were scattered. Governor, there is not much time left. Please attract Asmodai's attention as soon as possible. At this time, Raymond Kai's voice came from Lancelot, who was the first to attack. Asmodai, Kay, do you know the origin of this monster? Cornelia asked. I don't know, but please let the G1 mothership leave Chengtian Lianshan now. If it continues to stay here, I'm afraid Asmodai will target it. Raymond Kai's voice was filled with urgency. Yes, he knew. As the outline of the monster became clearer and clearer in front of Raymond Kai's eyes, more and more memory fragments appeared in his mind. Among them, the memory of a snow-white steel lion and a dark steel wolf working together to attack Asmodai was the clearest. In this memory, Ray Minkai saw that Asmodai not only had a huge mountain-like body, but also 4 huge energy beam cannons on its back. It also had a pair of terrifyingly strong legs that supported the mountain-like body, allowing it to move quickly. The white steel lion, with the help of the black steel wolf, quickly broke through Asmodai's defense line and rushed to the front of Asmodai. After a flash of white light, it transformed into a blue lightning bolt and leaped up. In a few ups and downs, the steel lion that turned into blue lightning jumped onto Asmodai's back before he could react. A golden flash flashed between the steel lion's claws, and behind Asmodai, an object between the 4 energy beam cannons was smashed into pieces. At this point, the remaining images in the memory fragments disappeared. The weakness is behind. Although Ray Minkai was puzzled, this was the only way. Boom! Suddenly, several white smoke rose from the huge monster in front of him, drawing several semicircular trajectories in the air, then turned around and dived towards Lancelot. Missiles? Are we being targeted? Ray Minkai's pupils shrank slightly, and Lancelot raised the variable Vari's rifle in his hand and aimed at one of the missiles and fired an impact bullet. Buzz! The moment the powerful impact bullet was fired, it broke through the air with a unique buzzing sound. 1 second. The swooping missile and the shockwave collided in the air between Asmodai and Lancelot in the short 1-second countdown. Boom! The missile that was hit by the impact bullet exploded. The shrapnel shockwave formed by the intense explosion also affected other missiles that were relatively close to it, so a series of explosions occurred. Boom! 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 Amidst the explosions, Lancelot raised his left hand, placed the energy light shield in front of him, and plunged into the hot and deadly fireball. Lancelot! This scene was clearly seen by Cornelia, Gilbert, and the others. Your Highness, do you want to support Lancelot? Gilbert asked. Yes. Do your best to restrain this monster. Don't let it have the time to observe the surroundings, or the G1 mothership will be in danger. Yes, Your Highness. With the order, Gloucester and Sunderland, who had gathered around Cornelia, immediately split into 2 groups. They advanced at full speed in opposite directions while continuously firing at the huge monster. They fired howitzers in an attempt to attract its attention and try their best to create an opportunity for Lancelot. Ray Minkai, who had just rushed out of the fireball, immediately realized this change, but he did not say anything. Instead, he accelerated again and rushed towards Asmodai at an even faster speed. Buzz! 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 There was an unknown tremor in the air, and at the same time, dozens of white smoke rose from Asmodai's body. This time, the target of the missiles was not Lancelot, but Cornelia and the others. It's here. Everyone spread out and cover each other. The Gloucester and Sunderland teams split up again, relying on the potholes caused by 3 days of continuous bombardment to dodge and cover each other. Boom! A Sunderland that could not dodge in time was hit by a missile. Boom! Gilbert drove the Gloucester and saved one of his subordinates. Boom! Cornelia gritted her teeth and drove the Longhorn Gloucester into the huge pit in front of her that was blown up by the aerial bomb, allowing the missiles that were chasing after them to fly over their heads. In the end, they hit the ground in vain and exploded. Thanks to Cornelia and the others' distraction, Lancelot was able to successfully rush to Asmodai's feet. However, the moment he rushed there, Ray Minkai was shocked by the scene in front of him. In his memory, Asmodai had strong and powerful legs. But in reality, this monster that was very similar to the Asmodai in his memory did not have legs. Instead, its entire lower body was like the roots of a crouching dragon, deeply embedded in the ground under its feet. How can this be? Ray Minkai shook his head hard and forced himself not to think about the relationship between the legs and the roots. He controlled Lancelot to raise its arms and used the claws on its arms to shoot alternately, using this to climb up Asmodai's body. However, even if Lancelot relied on its own nimble movements to quickly sprint up Asmodai's root-like lower body to its back, it did not mean that Asmodai, this terrifyingly huge monster, would ignore Lancelot's existence, which was like a small insect to it. Bang! 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 Following a series of banging sounds, frantically waving tentacles shot out from Asmodee's body without warning, whipping the air while quickly attacking Lancelot. TSK. I don't remember Asmodee having these disgusting things. Everything that happened in front of his eyes, there was no way to find the corresponding fragments from the memory fragments. In other words, although Ray Minkai could rely on the memory fragments to determine that the monster in front of him was Asmodee, it did not mean that Asmodee was still that Asmodee. You're changing as well? Asmodee. Suddenly, Ray Minkai subconsciously said this sentence that even he himself did not understand. Bang! A tentacle in the air whipped towards Lancelot's cockpit as fast as lightning. Lancelot's left hand retracted, retrieving the claws that pierced into Asmodee's body, and fiercely swung it towards the back. Whoosh! The sharp claws pierced through the air, producing bursts of buzzing sounds, and severed the tentacle that attempted to launch a sneak attack. Seeing that this attack was effective, Ray Minkai made a prompt decision and immediately changed his strategy. Lancelot's hands retracted and swung. The two claws retracted for a short distance, and then with an even more violent force, they were flung out. The wind suddenly blew. The tentacles were cut off one by one, and densely packed like a torrential downpour, fell to the ground. Lancelot, who mercilessly cut off all the tentacles blocking his way, relied on the rapidly regenerating granulation that did not give birth to new tentacles, and agilely stepped on it, borrowing the momentum to nimbly leap upwards. Puff! The moment the claws pierced into Asmodee's back, Ray Minkai knew that the weakness was in front of him. As long as Lancelot's radiation vibroblade mercilessly struck Asmodee's weakness, then this sudden battle with a great disparity in strength would end here. The steel cable connected to the claws quickly carried Lancelot to the sky, flying directly above Asmodee's back. In the blink of an eye, a dim light appeared in front of Ray Minkai. A weakness. This was the weakness that Ray Minkai saw in the memory fragment, Asmodee's weakness. General. The moment Remington's voice sounded, Lancelot retracted his claws, raised a pair of crimson long swords in his hands, and stabbed straight at the position of the flickering dim light on Asmodee's back. Clang! A loud explosion sounded. It was a long sword. Lancelot's radiation vibroblade collided with an invisible wall. What? Ray Minkai was slightly startled, but he discovered the crux of the problem. This wasn't an error in his memory. It was the difference between the current body that Ray Minkai was piloting and the powerful, pure white steel lion in his memory. Lancelot's radiation vibroblade might be unstoppable against other black scoundrels in Sunderland. But when facing Asmodee, who had a huge difference in size, it was exceptionally powerless. Tisk! Ray Minkai clenched his teeth, controlling Lancelot to change the radiation vibroblade in his right hand to the variable Vari's rifle at his waist. Immediately after, the rifle changed into its most powerful shooting mode. The muzzle pressed against the invisible wall, and the trigger was pulled. Boom! 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 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Under the continuous barrage of impact bullets, the invisible wall finally emitted cracking sounds. Ka-ka, ka-ka. In an instant, spiderweb cracks appeared, and the rifle's final impact bullet burst out. Bang! Kacha! The invisible wall shattered. The blade in Lancelot's hand once again pierced towards the dim light. However, in front of Ray Minkai's eyes, on Asmodee's back, a gate actually opened, and cannon barrels extended out from it. In an instant, a violent storm enveloped Lancelot. Boom! The explosions that shook the sky continued to explode. The violent flames engulfed Lancelot. Chapter 46. Woo! Ear-piercing alarms rang in his ears. All he could see was a blinding red. On the flashing red screen was a red prompt with a countdown of 30 seconds. This was the energy light shield overload mode that Royd installed for Lancelot after Ray Minkai fainted and was hospitalized. 30 seconds. After activating the overload mode, the energy light shield would have 3 to 5 times more powerful defense than normal. This was enough to save Lancelot's life at a critical moment and create an opportunity to turn the situation around. 25 seconds. Outside the energy light shield, there was a dense explosion caused by the frantic explosion of the cannonballs. Under normal circumstances, the powerful explosion was enough to destroy a Sunderland unit. Lancelot's left hand steadily raised the energy light shield in overload mode while his right hand held the radiation vibrosword tightly. Then, Ray Minkai pushed the right joystick. Lancelot held the energy light shield and shrank his body as much as possible behind the energy light shield. Then, he fell rapidly. Boom! A cannonball hit the energy light shield from bottom to top. The violent explosion changed the direction of Lancelot's fall. In the billowing smoke, Ray Minkai couldn't see the surrounding situation clearly. He could only rely on his memory and feeling to adjust the angle of Lancelot's fall. Boom! Another cannonball broke through the smoke and rushed to the front of the energy light beam. At this moment, Ray Minkai's eyes flashed with a bright light. I see it. The moment the cannonball broke through the smoke, Ray Minkai saw that the dim light was just below Lancelot's right. Suddenly, Lancelot waved his left hand and used the energy light shield again like a fly swatter. He swatted the cannonball to the side and took advantage of this gap to shoot the hook on his left forearm in the direction of the dim light. Bang! The wind created by the hooked claw broke through the fire and dust that surrounded it, stabbing straight into the side of the dim light. Ray Minkai pulled back the left joystick, and Lancelot immediately tightened the steel cable connected to the claw. Immediately, Lancelot flew towards the dim light like an arrow leaving the bow. Die! As the distance between them closed, the radiant vibrating sword in Lancelot's right hand became redder and more lethal. Dang! After passing through the barrage of cannon fire, Lancelot finally succeeded in thrusting his radiant vibrosword into the beam of light. Roar! The moment the gloomy light shattered under the blade of the sword, an inhuman roar pierced through the air, shaking Ray Minkai to the point that he was dizzy. Immediately after, a strong vibration wrapped Lancelot tightly, making him unable to move. Ray Minkai, who was barely conscious, looked up at the screen and realized that the monster in front of him was not dead. Furthermore, another pair of giant hands grew out of its back. The weapons on its arms were the 4 energy beam cannons that Asmodai carried on his back. And the main culprit that caused the violent vibration was actually that giant hand. It was tightly gripping Lancelot in its hand and constantly squeezing Lancelot with its powerful force. Ka. Lancelot's entire body was emitting different degrees of groaning. Especially the warning sound effect of the damage system. It was constantly bombarding Ray Minkai's ears. Ray Minkai pulled the left and right joysticks, and Lancelot, who was tightly gripped in his hand, was desperately struggling like a bug that was about to be crushed to death. But the disparity in strength was too great. Even if the memory fragments that appeared in Ray Minkai's mind told him where Asmodai's weakness was, Lancelot's strength was simply unable to crush Asmodai's weakness like the White Lion did and kill Asmodai. Quickly break away. At this moment, Cornelia's voice came. Ray Minkai clenched his teeth and reached out to pull the escape lock, but there was no response. No, Governor. Asmodai's weakness is on the back. Lancelot, and I still have a final mission. You. Due to Lancelot's activity, Asmodai's attention was diverted from Cornelia and the rest, allowing Cornelia and the rest to witness the entire process of Lancelot being gripped in Asmodai's hand, and the eruption of a powerful force to break free. Surrounded by countless electric sparks, Lancelot, who could only move his right hand, turned a radiation vibrosword around and fiercely pierced it into the giant hand that was tightly gripping him. The moment the sword made contact with Asmodai's body, An ear-piercing buzzing sound and dancing sparks erupted. Lei Minkai let out an angry roar. Lancelot waved his right arm with all his might, driving the blade to ruthlessly cut a deep wound on Asmodee's giant hand, so deep that the bones could be seen. Ka! Zzz! The sword slashed across, and a strange sound suddenly rang out. The giant hand that was tightly gripping Lancelot suddenly loosened. That thick thumb was nearly cut off by Lancelot's radiation vibrasword. Chance! Rei Minkai's eyes erupted with radiance. Lancelot struggled to raise his left hand and pressed down on Asmodee's giant hand with his right hand. Swish! Lancelot broke free. Rei Minkai's hands and feet moved, and Lancelot's high-speed, driving wheels erupted. Zzz! Amidst the familiar and powerful roar of the high-speed wheels, Lancelot dashed along Asmodee's gigantic arm like a bolt of lightning. Once again, he charged towards the glowing wound on his back that was pierced by the blade. Whoosh! The wind whistled from above. Lancelot lowered his body, and the high-speed driving wheels under his feet moved. Lancelot's entire body immediately half crouched on his arm and continuously rotated several times, dodging the giant hand above his head by a millisecond. Bang! The hook flew up again and deeply pierced into the back of the giant hand blocking Lancelot's path. Lancelot's arm moved and soared into the air. After easily flipping over the obstacle in front of him, he continued to charge forward. Boom! 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 Here it comes. Here it comes again. The sky full of cannon fire that forced Lancelot to overload his energy beam shield to avoid a calamity came once again. Boom! Boom! The whistling cannonballs landed on Asmodee's giant arm, setting off a series of loud explosions. That posture, it was as if it did not care whether its arm would be blown off by its own cannon fire. Perhaps it only cared about slapping Lancelot, this damned insect, to death. Boom! In the fireball, Lancelot dodged left and right, throwing the whistling cannonballs to the back of his head, letting them explode behind him, embellishing Lancelot's charge with starlight. Z. The energy beam shield on Lancelot's left arm weakly emitted a weak light. In the impact just now, the energy beam shield that had been operating in overload mode for 30 seconds had already reached its end. Even so, Lancelot still raised his left arm, blocking in front of his body, and raised his sword horizontally with his right hand, charging forward with all his might. No matter how fierce the cannon fire was, Lancelot, who was able to keep his feet on the ground, was not afraid at all. Even if the giant hand above his head was continuously slapping down, it was still unable to stop Lancelot's charge. Close! Close! Close again! Lancelot was still tens of meters away, and he was about to rush to the front of the dim light again. Everyone, cover fire! At this moment, Cornelia loudly ordered. Da-da-da-da! Dong! 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 Machine guns were roaring. Grenades were roaring. Gloucester and Sunderland, who had run out of ammunition, raised their knights' spears and combat sticks, and like madmen, they charged towards the bottom half of Asmodee that was deeply rooted in the ground. Cornelia and the others did not know if doing this would be able to support Lancelot, who was fighting in the sky, full of cannon fire. But at this moment, this was the only thing they could do. The enemy, too strong. Other than Lancelot, none of the mechs present would be able to survive under such a dense and terrifying barrage of cannon fire. Hope was on Lancelot. Charge! 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 There was nothing in front of Rei Minkai's eyes, except for that dim light that was right in front of him. As long as Lancelot ruthlessly stabbed the sword in his hand into that dim light, this frighteningly huge Asmodee would be destroyed just like that. Boom! Suddenly, a shrieking artillery shell landed at Lancelot's feet and exploded with a loud bang. Although Rei Minkai quickly piloted Lancelot to avoid the direct hit of the artillery shell, the shockwave caused by the explosion pushed him to the other side. At this moment, Lancelot's feet were in the air. Not good. He swung his left arm, and the claw shot out again, but it was caught by a giant hand. Seen through, under this entanglement, Asmodee actually saw through Lancelot's movement pattern. At this crucial moment, he once again caught Lancelot's weak spot. A strong force was transmitted through the steel cable of the claw, and Lancelot was suddenly pulled into the air like a kite. Raymond Kai's left hand that was holding the joystick tightened, and with a press of his thumb, the claw mechanism on his left arm suddenly popped out. Lancelot was free, but he also lost his footing and fell down powerlessly. At the same time, on Asmodee's back, the huge cannon array that almost made Lancelot die with a grudge was once again activated. Boom! The terrifying number of cannons let out a loud sound in unison. At this moment, Raymond Kai's eyes were as beautiful as the starry sky. Dazzling and beautiful sparks instantly engulfed Lancelot, and a deafening roar resounded through the sky. Lancelot came. Under Cornelia's incredulous gaze, 5 dark green shadows broke apart the fireball that engulfed Lancelot, revealing Lancelot, who was protected by a mirror overflowing with colorful light. At the same time, above the dome of heaven, a beautiful body with beautiful lines, like a beautiful white swan, was rapidly descending from the sky. Its target was the Asmodee below. Chapter 47. Above the clouds, a fighter with pure white wings, golden edges, canard wings, and a forward-swept wing aerodynamic configuration was hovering above a certain mountain range. Warning! Warning! Abnormal abyss response. Data corrected. Rising from mild to strong response. Response level is level 3. A cold electronic voice sounded in the cockpit of the fighter. Level 3? It seems that the famous doctor has reached the point of resorting to unscrupulous means to escape. Demonis, correcting the highest priority mission. Prepare to intervene in the battle against the abyss. Sitting in the cockpit was a petite figure wearing a pilot's uniform that was mainly white with gold lining. Understood. Data link connected. Real-time battlefield monitoring is connected. As the electronic voice sounded, the projection screen in the cockpit suddenly changed, and a fierce battle scene suddenly appeared in front of the petite figure. A huge monster with a height of nearly 50 meters. And in order to save itself and survive, the tiny body was desperately looking for the possibility of killing the monster. It really is a level 3 abyss response. Oof. Those intelligence agents weren't incompetent. At least the doctor's ability has been proven. As soon as the cold snort ended, she continued. Identification Operation ID. WK00013. Inspector Himimi. Abyss Level 3 confirmed. Application to intervene in the battle against the Abyss. Abyss response confirmed. Application approved. Weapon usage authority is now unlocked. The current weapon usage authority is level 3. Please be careful in battle. As Himimi's words fell, another electronic voice that was obviously different from the previous one sounded. At the same time, a small screen under Himimi's right eye popped up a prompt indicating that it had been unlocked. Authorization level 3? Just in time. Himimi smiled softly and shouted, Wing Fire 3 attack. Ka! 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 Under the unique cold wind of 10,000 meters high, the back of the pure white fighter opened a gate one after another, revealing the miniature, triangular wings stored inside. Facing the cold wind, they soared into the air. They seemed to be swarming, but in fact, there was a certain pattern to their formation. With the pure white fighter as the center, they spread to both sides. Go! Wing Fire 3. The big guy below is your mission this time. Himimi's eyes lit up with a golden light. She had inherited her father's powerful spiritual power and was now connected to the triangular wings that followed the pure white fighter. In the blink of an eye, the nearly 100 triangular wings lowered their heads, plunged into the thick clouds below, and rushed down toward the mountain range that was in a fierce battle. Void Walker, let the stage begin. Himimi let out a loud shout and pushed the pure white fighter down. They either flew into the distance like headless flies until they ran out of fuel and exploded, or collided with each other and ended up killing each other. Boom! Boom, boom. Countless fireballs continuously bloomed behind the Voidwalker, as if cheering for the high-speed movement of the Voidwalker. The scene. Ray Minkai felt that it was somewhat ironic. The attacks that previously left him battered and battered were so easily dealt with by this pure white fighter that suddenly intervened in the battlefield and saved him. Moreover, the Voidwalker wasn't the only one flying in the sky. There were also nearly 100 triangular wings flying in the sky. They either flew around the Voidwalker, blocking the cannonballs and missiles that couldn't be avoided, or swooped down in groups towards the cannons on Asmodee's back, shooting laser beams to destroy them. With the cooperation of these little things with a clear goal and amazing efficiency, although the Voidwalker was carrying Lancelot on its back, it still achieved its goal without any mishap. Chance. With the help of a large number of triangular wings, the high-speed hovering Voidwalker also found an opportunity. Mimi's voice just fell, and the nose of the Voidwalker had already locked onto Asmodee's weakness, the dim light on its back. Boom, boom, boom. Asmodee, whose weakness was once again threatened, no longer paid attention to the triangular wings that were still harassing him. He directly used all the cannons that could still attack, and even that pair of giant hands. It was all for the sake of stopping Voidwalker, who was a threat to his weakness. Naive. The golden light in Mimi's eyes burst out, and the formation of the triangular wings around the Voidwalker changed, quickly forming a sharp arrow formation in front of the Voidwalker. In an instant, laser beams shot out from the front of the triangular wings, outlining a gorgeous and fatal light net in front of the Voidwalker. Boom, boom, boom. Under the obstruction of this light net, the cannonballs that filled the sky were actually unable to cross the line and attack the Voidwalker. They could only powerlessly fall under the light net. Even Asmodee's giant hands had almost made Lancelot die with a grievance sizzled under the heat of this light net and quickly melted. Ka! Ka! The magazines on the Voidwalker's abdomen opened one after another, and 2 long missiles were fired. Boom! 2 white smoke flew past, and the pair of giant hands that were competing with the light net was suddenly blown to pieces. Chance! Fire! Mimi shouted. Ray Minkai, who had been preparing for a long time, gritted his teeth and controlled Lancelot to raise the long energy rifle in his hand. It was strange. The system used by this energy rifle could actually connect with Lancelot's weapon system, which made Ray Minkai surprised. However, now is not the time to be tangled up in this matter. The moment the energy rifle's aiming system synchronized with Lancelot's weapon system, the red cross appeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. Close, close. Once again, Ray Minkai could clearly see the dim light in front of him. This time, Ray Minkai was confident that he could defeat it, not only because of the Voidwalker's intervention, but also because Ray Minkai had absolute confidence that he could achieve this goal. Beep beep. The red cross stopped above the dim light. The cross turned green. Chance! Ray Minkai decisively pulled the trigger. Boom! At the same time as a loud explosion, a huge force shattered Lancelot's arms. But even with the ear-piercing alarm ringing in his ears, Ray Minkai's eyes were still filled with joy, as if he had just gotten his revenge on a great enemy. Swoosh! The beam of light from the energy rifle arrived in a flash and went straight into the dim light. After a few seconds of silence, an earth-shattering roar suddenly exploded. Chapter 48. The burning forest was put out by the fire trucks that came from all directions, and the dust that filled the sky gradually fell to the ground. The battle finally came to an end with the death of the huge and terrifying monster Asmodee. Everyone who participated in the battle couldn't help but sigh when they saw the huge body quietly turn into a sand dune made of useless grayish-white sand. It's over. It feels as dreamy as the legendary mythical battle. Lancelot, who lost his arms, jumped down from the back of the Voidwalker, landed on the gray sand dune, and slowly slid to the ground. But after this set of movements that were undoubtedly easy for Lancelot in the past, The only seventh-generation nightmare in the world finally couldn't hold on anymore. Pata, bang, boom. In the blink of an eye, sparks and smoke exploded all over Lancelot's body, and Lancelot finally knelt on the ground and lost all reaction. Gotcha! With the support of the backup energy, Lancelot's cockpit opened with difficulty. Ray Minkai, who was sweating profusely but had a carefree expression on his face, jumped out of the cockpit and landed steadily on the ground. Lancelot, thank you for your hard work. Ray Minkai looked at Lancelot, who was gradually covered in sparks, and sincerely thanked him. If it weren't for Lancelot's outstanding performance, Ray Minkai wouldn't have been able to hold on until the appearance of the mysterious pure white body, let alone successfully kill Asmodai. Squeak. At this time, there was an ear-piercing sound of brakes not far away. Ray Minkai looked back and saw Royd and Sayer hurriedly jumping out of the special transport vehicle that had not yet stopped and running over. Oh, how did my Lancelot become like this? When he saw Lancelot, who was constantly emitting sparks and explosions, Royd's heart felt like it was being torn apart. Royd, are you only concerned about Lancelot? Kay, are you okay? Sahil's thin eyebrows were deeply furrowed as she worriedly looked at Ray Minkai, who was sweating profusely. Ray Minkai shook his head and raised his hand to wipe his sweat. He smiled and said, although there were many risks along the way, it was still considered smooth. It's just that Lancelot isn't going to make it. Royd stopped wailing and continued Ray Minkai's topic. In this state, it can be said that it is completely useless. Fortunately, other than your beautiful secretary's personal computer, Lancelot still has 2 spare parts. As he spoke, Royd reached out to push up his glasses. His eyes flashed with a dangerous light. Although Nightmare is a consumable item, I hope you'll pay attention to it in the next battle. Otherwise, no matter how many spare parts Lancelot has, it won't be enough for you. Ray Minkai helplessly twitched the corner of his mouth and rolled his eyes. You should have seen the battle just now. How can you care so much? Kay, you. As soon as Royd shouted, Sahil, who was standing on the side, grabbed his collar, dragged him to the other side, and performed a corrective punch. While they were fighting, a roar swept across the sky. Ray Minkai, Royd, who had a pair of panda eyes, and Sahil, who was clenching her fists, all looked up at the same time. They found that the pure white body, surrounded by many triangular wings, was passing through this area at a low altitude and flying toward the location of the G1 mothership. Oh, okay. Check and check. As soon as Royd saw the pure white airframe, he quickly broke free from Cecil's clutches and ran to Lei Minkai's side and said vaguely, question mark. A question mark appeared above Ray Minkai's head. Okay, it's an order to assemble. The pure white body is called Voidwalker. It is piloted by a girl who claims to be an inspector. Now she seems to be requesting assistance from Her Royal Highness Cornelia, the governor of District 11. Voidwalker? A very profound name. What is the name of the girl? Do you know? Ray Minkai pondered for a moment and asked again. It seems to be called Himimi. What? Himimi? As soon as he heard this name, Ray Minkai was taken aback. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Thinking back to the voice that just communicated with him, it really seemed to be the voice of the girl who met him in Euphemia. Sahil, now Her Royal Highness Cornelia, is gathering people to welcome the Voidwalker, right? Yes, Sahil nodded, pulled Royd, who wanted to slip away, and looked at Ray Minkai. Okay, there's also a small off-road vehicle on the transport vehicle. You can use it to return to the G1 mothership. Here, leave it to us. I'm counting on you. Without too much nonsense, Ray Minkai drove the small off-road vehicle out of the transport vehicle and quickly sped towards the G1 mothership that had returned to the base at the foot of the mountain. In the sky, a patrol formation formed by 3 triangular wings passed by from time to time. They sometimes hovered, sometimes accelerated, and sometimes flew into the distance. Drone? For some reason, after Ray Minkai carefully observed the appearance and behavior of these triangular wings, he couldn't help but spit out a term. With that small body, other than the drone, Ray Minkai really couldn't think of any other weapon that could be related to the triangular wings. However, Ray Minkai really couldn't understand how much energy was contained in that small body to be able to support the triangular wings to still soar above the sky after the fierce battle. While he was lost in his thoughts, the small off-road vehicle driven by Ray Minkai returned to the base where the G-1 mothership was located. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw Veretta standing at the intersection, looking in his direction. "Kay, the governor is looking for you." As soon as she saw Ray Minkai, Veretta waved her hand and shouted. Ray Minkai parked the off-road vehicle in front of Veretta. As he watched the brown beauty board the off-road vehicle, he asked, "Is it that inspector?" "Yes, yes." Veretta nodded. Her silver ponytail was blown up by the breeze after Ray Minkai started the off-road vehicle again. The governor and deputy governor are entertaining the inspector. They seem to be trying to get information about the monster from her. "Yes, I got it." Ray Minkai nodded. After parking the off-road vehicle beside the G-1 mothership, he turned to look at Veretta and said, "Go back and sort out the losses of Department Q. In this battle, not only did the governor's army lose a lot, but our Department Q also lost a lot." "Yes." Ray Minkai turned to the other side of the G-1 mothership. When he came to the front of the G-1 mothership, he saw a strange pure white body. Although Ray Minkai could recognize the outline of the upper body of the body, he was shocked by the feet and hands that suddenly protruded from under the pure white body's abdomen. "Is this a transformation?" Inadvertently, Ray Minkai once again said a name that even he himself didn't realize was coming out of his mouth. "Yes, transformation. This is the guardian form of the Voidwalker." Suddenly, an unfamiliar yet familiar voice rang out from Ray Minkai's body. Looking back, Ray Minkai could see a black-haired girl in a white tights, which was actually a pilot's uniform, looking at him while being surrounded by Cornelia, Euphemia, and many personal guards. Seeing the familiar face of the young girl, Ray Minkai revealed a look of surprise. "Looks like you recognized it too." "Kay, she's a friend we met twice in the downtown area, Mimi." Euphemia found it amusing when she saw the surprise on Ray Minkai's face. Just now, Mimi drove the Voidwalker to Euphemia and reported her identity. She was also very surprised. Even though she felt that Mimi was very mysterious in their previous encounter, she did not expect Mimi to be the pilot who could pilot this mysterious body that she had never seen before and fight against a terrifying monster. "Masked Man, I'm Inspector Mimi. Now, according to the provisions of the Abyss Defense Law, Chapter 3, Section 3, Article 6, I'm requesting your help." Mimi's expression turned serious as she spoke to Ray Minkai seriously. Abyss Defense Law. Ray Minkai did not understand. It's the name of that monster. The organization behind this inspector seems to be set up to deal with that monster and the mastermind behind it. Just now, she requested our help in the name of the organization she belongs to and promised to share some information about the Abyss with us. At Cornelia's behest, Gilbert briefly explained the short meeting he had with Mimi just now. Organization. At this time, Ray Minkai seemed to realize that there were more and more mysteries surrounding the girl in front of him. "You have no right to know the name of the organization for the time being. Now, what you need to know is that the monster is not the only one. I'm afraid that it will continue to appear in the future." Mimi nodded and turned to look at Cornelia. "In order to capture the culprit who caused the appearance of the Abyss in this world as soon as possible, I hope that the Britannia Empire can assist me in completing this mission. In return, I will provide compensation for this assistance." In the dusk of the setting sun, a majestic figure stood on the dilapidated temple and stared at the broken ruins below. At this time, a man wearing the uniform of a palace chamberlain walked up the steps and stood not far away. He said respectfully, "Your Majesty, the second princess, Her Highness Cornelia, has sent back an urgent message." "Oh, did Cornelia die in battle?" the figure said slowly. "No, Her Highness did not die in battle. She just encountered some tricky situations. the Chamberlain said respectfully as he raised the tablet in his arms to the top of his head. Heavy footsteps slowly sounded, and a mountain-like body stood in front of the Chamberlain. After a sharp gaze focused on the screen of the tablet for a while, deafening laughter suddenly sounded. Ha 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 ha! As expected, as expected, God will not sit and wait for death. As the laughter echoed in the dilapidated temple for a long time, the lion called His Majesty said in a deep voice, "Very good. Let Cornelia escort the messenger of God back to his country. For the time being, Euphemia will act as the acting governor of District 11. Yes, the Chamberlain responded. Just as he was about to leave, he was stopped again. Wait, UFFI doesn't seem to have a knight yet. Well, then tell UFFI, if she has a knight, let her choose by herself. Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 49. Concession Airport. A luxury passenger plane, surrounded by the Void Walker and the drone cluster under its command, slowly lifted off and flew toward the capital city of the Britannia Empire in North America. On the plane, Cornelia and her guard were ordered to accompany Inspector Himimi on this trip to the capital city. Of course, although Himimi said that the accompanying mission that Cornelia accepted was unnecessary, in fact, she still respected the arrangement of the Britannia Empire. Moreover, before she left, she specifically reminded Ray Minkai that after this trip to the capital city, she would need Ray Minkai's assistance on a mission. In this regard, Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Although Himimi didn't specify what the mission was about, Ray Minkai saw some clues from something she gave him. It was a prismatic crystal that emitted bursts of dark blue light. For some reason, when Ray Minkai saw the crystal, he vaguely knew how to use it. She knows about the white cat? Looking at the passenger plane that was slowly flying into the sky, surrounded by the Void Walker and the drone cluster, Ray Minkai squeezed the prismatic crystal in his palm and turned to leave the airport. But before that, he was stopped by a group of people. "Kay, can you accompany me for a moment?" Surrounded by guards, the third princess, who was wearing a white princess dress, looked at Lei Minkai and said with a smile, "My pleasure, Your Highness." On the top floor of the empty terminal, Ray Minkai and Euphemia stood on the edge of the wire fence, facing the breeze, and watched the passenger planes waiting to take off. "Kay, I didn't expect Mimi to be an inspector." Euphemia was silent for a moment, then spoke first. "Yes, she is really surprising, whether it's her or her Void Walker." Ray Minkai thought for a moment, then walked to Euphemia's side and watched the passenger planes lined up to take off with her side by side. Euphemia turned her head and looked at Ray Minkai, who was next to her, and couldn't help but smile. Then, with a hint of thought, she said, "Kay, are there other races in this world?" "Probably." Thinking of the mysterious girl Himimi, Ray Minkai couldn't help but say, whether it was Himimi herself or the mysterious and powerful Voidwalker, they both exuded an aura that suggested Himimi was not from this world. Lei Minkai learned this from Royd, who couldn't take his eyes off the Voidwalker. "Kay, the technology level of that energy beam gun has surpassed Lancelot's. No, it should be said that the technology level of the entire Britannia Empire is several levels above." Royd, who said this, took off his glasses, took the handkerchief handed over by Cecil, and wiped his glasses while saying, "In fact, according to my speculation, the energy system used by the Void Walker itself is beyond any technological knowledge in our world. In other words, it doesn't belong to this world." After Royd put on his glasses again, his face showed unwillingness, but there was a hint of expectation in his fear. "Kay, do you know? Now I feel very scared. Even if only the Void Walker came to this world, its power is enough to destroy the entire defense force of the Britannia Empire overnight. From today onwards, the seemingly powerful army of the Britannia Empire that dominated the world's major battlefields will become weak in the blink of an eye. Kay, do you believe all this?" Recalling what Royd said to him before, Ray Minkai sighed secretly. He knew that he couldn't answer Euphemia's question. If the mysterious girl, Himimi, came to this world with malice, she would have already acted. But Her Royal Highness didn't dwell too much on this issue. As her pink hair fluttered in the wind, Her Royal Highness raised her delicate face, stared at Rei Minkai's eyes hidden under the mask, and asked softly, "K." Before the governor left, he asked me to assist Himimi with the task entrusted to us. Can you help me? Rei Minkai took a step back, bent over, and said, "With pleasure, Your Royal Highness. This is also my task." Euphemia nodded gently. "Then, from today onwards, I'll leave it to you." "Yes, Your Royal Highness." Although the task had been accepted, due to the heavy losses suffered by Department Q and the Britannia Empire's army that participated in the Battle of Narita Lianshan, Euphemia and Rei Minkai had to clean up the mess in front of them. For example, cleaning up the dilapidated and devastated battlefield in front of them. First, Second Rescue Team clean up the battlefield. Medical Team seized the time to rescue the wounded who were dug out. Under the command of Euphemia, the emergency rescue team that was urgently assembled in Narita Lianshan quickly began to act, striving to save as many lives as possible in the shortest time. Rei Minkai led Department Q and dealt with the gray sand dune according to the method left by Himimi. "K, this is the plan. According to the current progress, we will finish dealing with this sand dune in 3 days." Beretta, who had finished arranging the tasks, came back with a task schedule. Rei Minkai took the task schedule, glanced at it, and nodded. "Let's follow this progress. According to Himimi, this is no longer a threat to us. The only thing we need to do is to separate it and burn it." While they were talking, the sound of crying suddenly came from not far away. "What happened?" Beretta turned her head and asked the soldier, who ran back from the direction of the crying sound. "Yes, the rescue team encountered some problems. We may need to use the engineering body." The soldier quickly replied, Engineering body?" Rei Minkai looked at the excavator that was excavating the sand dune not far away. After loading the sand onto the transport vehicle, he turned his head to look at Veretta and asked, "Veretta, is your body finished?" Valletta was stunned for a moment before she nodded. "Yes. Director Royd completed the final assembly 3 hours ago and is now in the middle of debugging." Lei Minkai pondered for a moment. "How about this? The construction machinery here still needs to be used, and I'll transfer other construction machinery over. Go back and let them prepare." Under Lei Minkai's command, the soldier hurriedly saluted before turning around and running off. Valletta, on the other hand, exclaimed, "K, are you going to use a new body?" Rei Minkai smiled. "Well, it's a test. Veretta, although it's a new body, it's still a branch of Lancelot, isn't it? It's better for me, the pilot of Lancelot, to be responsible for the test." 10 minutes later, a pink nightmare that looked similar to Lancelot was personally driven by Veretta to the rescue location located halfway up the mountain. "How's the situation?" Veretta looked back at the nightmare that belonged to her, but she still couldn't drive it. She got out of the vehicle and asked the soldier who came to ask for help. "Yes, due to the previous bombing and the battle that followed, there was a landslide in this area, and the Sunderland team that participated at that time was swallowed up." When the soldier was reporting the situation, a woman suddenly rushed over and grabbed Veretta's right hand in a panic and cried, "Are you from the rescue team? Please save my husband." "Husband?" Veretta was stunned and used her eyes to signal the soldier to continue explaining the situation. "This is the wife of one of the trapped people who was buried in the collapsed area." While the soldier was speaking, a young girl that looked similar to the woman walked over and comforted the woman softly, making Veretta leave. "Trapped people? Are they from my army?" Rei Minkai's voice came from the pink Lancelot. "No, my father is a technician who detects and mines cherry stones. The reason why he is here is because at that time, my father was here on a business trip." The young girl with long brown hair shook her head and looked at the pink Lancelot with a complicated gaze. "Is that so? I got it. Please wait a moment. Immediately begin the rescue." After Rei Minkai let Veretta bring the woman and young girl to the other side, he piloted the Lancelot and began the rescue mission that was both a test and a rescue mission. According to the report of the soldiers who participated in the rescue mission, there was indeed a building buried under the mountain slope after the mountain flood and bombing. What was surprising was that the building that should have been buried by the mountain torrent caused by the explosion of the Black Knights, as well as the subsequent bombardment, had a trace of survival because of the collapse that occurred in the subsequent battle. The people who were trapped in the building and were about to suffocate to death managed to obtain a trace of air that allowed them to continue living through the opening that was opened up by the collapse. Therefore, in the following rescue mission, the survivors who saw the hope of survival naturally tried their best to call for help. The situation developed to what Ray Minkai and Veretta knew. The only difficulty in rescuing these survivors was the two mechs that were stuck in key positions. In the end, it was still due to the mountain flood and bombing that the building that trapped the survivors was damaged in many places. The collapse that followed was proof of this. Fortunately, Sunderland that fell in the collapse was able to support a portion of the wall that was about to collapse, thus leaving some space for the survivors to live. The difficulty of the rescue mission was to ensure the safety of the survivors while moving Sunderland. They also had to clear a path for the survivors to return to safety. Ray Minkai was already confident about this. The Pink Lancelot followed the path that the rescue team had cleared and arrived in front of Sunderland that was lying in the rubble. It raised its hands and moved them slightly. Buzz! 2 energy shields were instantly activated. Then, the Pink Lancelot raised its energy shield and pressed it against the wall that was supported by Sunderland. Okay, hurry up and move Sunderland. Veretta, who understood, immediately began to direct the rescue team. Begin! The rescue team moved quickly. After taking care of the dangerous walls that were about to collapse at any time after losing Sunderland, they quickly cleared a path and rescued the survivors one by one. Okay, all the survivors are rescued. Veretta, who was checking the identities of the survivors one by one, said to the Pink Lancelot that was still supporting the crumbling wall. Okay, tell everyone to stay away. A minute later, with a loud boom, the wall collapsed. The Pink Lancelot was safely back on the ground. Just as Ray Minkai walked out of the Pink Lancelot's cockpit, the girl with long brown hair quickly walked over and bowed deeply to Ray Minkai. Thank you very much. My name is Shaylee Finette. Thank you very much for saving my father. Chapter 50. The rescue mission soon came to an end. Not every family was as lucky as Sherry's family. When the rescue team confirmed that there were no signs of life and began to evacuate, the suppressed cries echoed throughout the entire hillside. Euphemia, the kind princess of the empire, could not bear to look at the situation in front of her. She wanted to say something several times, but she could not say anything. She knew that in addition to the soldiers who died in battle, most of them were civilians who were affected by the battle. Deputy Governor, leave this to us, Ray Minkai suggested. Euphemia shook her head and finally chose to follow the G1 mothership back to the concession. Even if she still wanted to accompany the families of the victims to see the corpses of her loved ones, there were more matters waiting for her to deal with in the lease. As a representative who stayed behind, Ray Minkai looked at the G1 mothership that was slowly retreating under the protection of the army. He asked softly, Veretta, how is the Valkyrie? Valkyrie was the new name of the Lancelot that had just been released not long ago. In order to distinguish the relationship between the two Lancelot, Veretta suggested changing the name to Valkyrie. Yes, it's in good condition. With your driving data, the adjustment work went smoothly. Veretta could not help but smile when she talked about her new body. Very good. Make use of the time to familiarize yourself with the Valkyrie's performance. The next job will be a challenge. Not all members of Department Q were involved in this rescue. When the rescue operation began, the intelligence personnel returned to the concession first and began a new round of intelligence collection and screening of suspicious personnel. Perhaps it was because of the Black Knight Regiment's activity some time ago, or perhaps it was because Department Q had gotten rid of the parasites. Many suspicious points that they used to find troublesome were quickly eliminated. What followed was a list of suspicious personnel. It was time for Department Q to move out. However, before that, Ray Minkai could only sit in the temporary office of the special base for various reasons and let Veretta command the other subordinates to attack everywhere. Of course, Ray Minkai didn't just sit there and wait with his eyes wide open. Instead, he asked Cecil to prepare a large warehouse specially set up to accommodate the body. At that moment, there was nothing else in the warehouse other than Ray Minkai and the white cat in his arms. Ray Minkai turned around and looked at the empty warehouse. He lowered his head and looked at the white cat lying comfortably in his arms. Ever since that deadly battle, the mysterious personality in the white cat's body seemed to have disappeared, leaving only the cute kitten behind. Meow. As if sensing Ray Minkai's gaze, the white cat in his arms raised its head and meowed at Ray Minkai. Speaking of which, I'm really not used to seeing you like this. Ray Minkai shook his head, squatted down, put the white cat on the ground, and raised his hand to touch the white cat's head. Ray Minkai's gentle strength made the white cat squint its eyes in comfort, and a purring sound came from its throat. From this reaction and appearance, the white cat was really no different from an ordinary cat. Ray Minkai's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation, but it was quickly washed away by determination. He took a step back and quietly looked at the white cat. After losing the comfortable touch, the white cat tilted its head and looked at Ray Minkai in confusion. It raised its small paw, licked it, and washed its face. Seeing that the white cat was not surprised by his actions, Ray Minkai took out the crystal that Mimi gave him from his pocket. Once, Ray Minkai had doubts, but no matter how he thought, no matter how much he doubted, there was only one answer. If Mimi really had evil intentions, then the fall of the empire that Royd said would have happened long ago. Moreover, in Royd's speculation, there was another possibility. That terrifying monster was probably related to the appearance of Mimi. It was just that the probability of the two being enemies was higher than other speculations. Therefore, Ray Minkai indifferently put the prismatic crystal in front of the white cat. Meow. As soon as the sparkling prismatic crystal appeared, it attracted the attention of the white cat, who was seriously washing its face and licking its paw. In the blink of an eye, the white cat's eyes were already reflecting the prismatic crystal's shadow. The white cat took a step forward, and its pink nose carefully leaned over. Meow. The white cat sniffed, as if confirming something, and then raised its head to look at Ray Minkai, whose expression was covered by the silver mask. Ray Minkai did not move, nor did he say anything. He just quietly looked at the white cat, waiting to see what kind of reaction it would have on the mysterious crystal. Meow. The white cat sniffed a few times, but it did not smell anything. Thus it stretched out its chubby little paw and touched the crystal. Wong! The moment the little paw touched the crystal, a flash suddenly flashed across the crystal's smooth mirror surface, and at the same time, a low, buzzing sound was heard. Meow! The white cat trembled and took a few steps back. All the fur on its body stood up, and a low growl sounded from its throat. But in the next moment, the white cat trembled all over. After its body stiffened for a while, it began to move again. However, the white cat's movements were very stiff, as if someone was controlling its movements from behind with an invisible line. Ray Minkai, who witnessed all of this, did not move. He just quietly watched the white cat move step by step towards the crystal lying on the ground. At this moment, in Ray Minkai's senses, the white cat in front of him seemed to be quietly changing back to the original mysterious white cat. It was going to wake up? The moment this question flashed through Ray Minkai's mind, the white cat raised its little paw and pressed it on the crystal. Suddenly, countless rays of light burst out from the inside of the crystal, quickly spreading along the little paw that was pressing on it towards the white cat's entire body. In just a few breaths of time, other than the white cat's small head, the rest of its body was wrapped in the light. But even so, Ray Minkai still could not see a trace of fear in the white cat's dull eyes. He even vaguely felt a trace of excitement erupting from the white cat's body like a storm. Meow roar. Half a cat's meow, half a roar. This sudden change made Ray Minkai involuntarily retreat a distance. He looked at the white cat from afar, who kept roaring. No, perhaps the white cat could no longer be considered a white cat. Under Ray Minkai's gaze, countless rays of white light suddenly burst out from the white cat's body that was almost wrapped into a ball of wool. These white lights seemed to explode. After outlining explosive radiation lines in midair, they suddenly shrank and expanded. Like the lines drawn by a painter, they quickly drew square but beautiful lines in midair with a white cat as the center. As long as he observed these lines that were constantly being drawn from an overall perspective, Ray Minkai would find that behind these lines was actually a huge beast. One head, a huge beast with white armor. Ray Minkai was not unfamiliar with it, because in the battle that almost cost Ray Minkai his life, it was because of the appearance of this white beast that Ray Minkai was spared. Roar! While he was thinking, the white beast once again let out a thunderous roar. The thunderous roar continued to echo in the empty warehouse, causing Ray Minkai's ears to ring. He could hardly hear anything else clearly. Then, the white beast stopped roaring and lowered its head to look at Ray Minkai. Only then did Ray Minkai realize that the white beast was so huge. Not only did the huge head occupy Ray Minkai's line of sight, but it also made Ray Minkai feel that even if he opened his arms, he would not be able to reach the edge of the beast's head. "You're awake." Ray Minkai calmed his mind and said calmly. "Roar." What responded to him was still a low roar. "Can't you turn back into a white cat?" As soon as Ray Minkai finished speaking, the white beast suddenly turned into white light and dissipated, leaving only the white cat that walked in front of Ray Minkai. "Kai, you really surprised me. Where did you find a fragment?" The white cat raised its head and looked at Ray Minkai. That familiar voice, it was not difficult to recognize that it was the mysterious white cat from before. "You really are awake. It seems that there are other people in this world who know about me and you." "Other people?" The mysterious white cat froze for a moment, then suddenly said with some urgency, "Tell me, who is it?" The mysterious white cat's sudden urgency made Ray Minkai even more certain of his guess. Thus, under Ray Minkai's narration, the mysterious white cat knew what happened after it fell asleep. "Asmodai?" The mysterious white cat showed a dignified expression. "I didn't expect you to remember Asmodai. It seems that you haven't completely lost your memory." "Kai." After a pause, the mysterious white cat said, "Since Mimi, who claimed to be the patrol officer, woke me up, you might as well help her complete her mission. After all, we should have a common enemy." "Now I think so too." Ray Minkai nodded, expressing his agreement. Work hard to live on, Kai, as long as you still hold on to your original wish." The mysterious white cat yawned, stretched, and prepared to leave. "Wait, what's the matter? Although I'm awake now, I still need some time to digest the energy." "Your name? Do you want me to call you little cat?" Ray Minkai recalled the beast form he saw with his own eyes. That was a ferocious and majestic steel lion. "State 0. This is my current name, Kai." Chapter 51. Suddenly, there was a flurry of footsteps in the quiet alley. The sound of panicked panting became clearer as the messy footsteps approached. Suddenly, a few panicked figures rushed out from the shadows of the alley. But in the next second, before these figures could see their surroundings clearly, their vision was disrupted by a glaring light. "Ah!" As several screams rang out, several soldiers in full individual armor quietly appeared behind them and used non-lethal weapons to knock down these panicked and fleeing figures to the ground. "The target has been controlled." At the other end of the street, Veretta reported the mission situation to Ray Minkai, who was sitting in the command vehicle. "Okay, now that we're done here, let's move on to the next one." Ray Minkai nodded and reached out to swipe on the electronic map on the table, connecting all the symbols on the electronic map together. This was the next mission target for the Q department. "Yes," Veretta responded and turned to arrange the next mission. TSK. How wonderful! At this moment, a series of astonished voices came from outside the door. Ray Minkai did not need to turn around to know that it was Royd and his assistant, Sayer. Their goal was the white cat, State Zero. After State Zero digested the energy of the mysterious crystal, it found Ray Minkai and confessed that it could find the Zergs hiding near the concession. This was also to complete the mission of assisting Himimi. Ray Minkai did not object to this point. Instead, he felt that it came at the right time. Because even if the Q department found more suspicious people, it would be difficult to distinguish whether they were human or not. After all, it was the first time for this human to come into contact with Asmodai. Other than Himimi, only State Zero could understand them. Of course, Ray Minkai himself could also be considered part of it. However, he clearly recognized that he seemed to have lost some of his memories, very important memories. Thus, under the guidance of the White Cat, the Zergs hiding in the concession were found one by one. They were either killed on the spot or captured with anesthesia. The White Cat's performance also made Royd, who unintentionally witnessed this change, interested. However, Royd seemed to have no affinity with cats. Every time Royd got close, State Zero would pop out its sharp claws and display them in front of Royd's eyes, making it seem as though no one was allowed to come close. This made Royd, who had a strong thirst for knowledge, quite distressed. Come, 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 cute State Zero, this is your favorite dried fish. Come, come, come. Under Cecil's helpless gaze, the excited Royd tore open the bag full of dried fish and took out a few dried fish while trying to entice White Cat Zero, who was lying on the console. Shwa! A cold light flashed. The dried fish in Royd's hand was broken into 2 pieces, and even the bag of dried fish was broken, scattering the dried fish all over the floor. Stupid human, don't show these things in front of me. White Cat State Zero glanced coldly at Royd, jumped down from the control panel, and disappeared into the shadows of the command room in the blink of an eye. Royd's mouth twitched, looked at the piece of dried fish in his hand, and sighed helplessly. Sure enough, it still doesn't work. Speaking of which, is State Zero still considered a creature? Or an alien creature? An alien? The latter half of the sentence was directed at Ray Minkai, who was sitting at the side and watching the show. Maybe. Royd, it's useless for you to ask me about other things. I don't know much. Ray Minkai shook his head, pointed at the dried fish on the ground, and then pointed behind Royd. A bone-chilling, murderous aura quietly shrouded Royd in it. A few minutes later, Royd, who had panda eyes again, cleaned up the dried fish on the ground under Sayer's supervision. K. Is State Zero the steel behemoth that saved you and Lancelot in the previous battle? Sayer stared at Royd for a while, and couldn't help but ask. One must know that during the week when Ray Minkai was hospitalized, the White Cat State Zero was personally taken care of by Sayer. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't understand why the cute and well-behaved White Cat would suddenly change into a different cat and suddenly speak human language. It should be. Sayer, I've said it before. There are many things that I don't quite understand. But since it has already happened, we can only accept it. Just like the appearance of Asmodai in the battle at Narita Lianshan. Ray Minkai didn't want to reveal too much about State Zero, so he just casually played Tai Chi and glossed over it. Royd, who finally cleaned up the dried fish on the ground, put away the cleaning tools and took out a photo from his pocket, while revealing his usual playful smile. "Kay, I have a piece of news that isn't too bad, but it isn't too good either." As he spoke, Royd placed the photo in his hand on the electronic map and pushed it in front of Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai looked down, and his eyes, hidden under the silver mask, suddenly widened. In the photo, a stone sculpture of a giant beast appeared on it. And the giant stone sculpture looked exactly the same as the steel behemoth that the White Cat State Zero looked like. On the other side of the earth, at the royal capital airport of the Holy Britannia Empire, many nobles gathered at the airport under the order of His Majesty, the Emperor. Their purpose was to welcome an extremely important guest to His Majesty the Emperor and the Holy Britannia Empire. Have you heard? I heard that it's the messenger of God. Are you serious? Countess, don't talk nonsense. It's true. I heard it from a chamberlain. Chamberlain, you went to look for your pretty boy Chamberlain again? Whispers quietly spread among the well-dressed and solemn nobles. And the tall blond man, standing in front of the group of nobles, didn't seem to hear it. Or maybe he just pretended that he couldn't hear the whispers. His eyes, from beginning to end, were fixed on a sky above his head, watching the luxurious passenger plane that was slowly descending under the escort of the strange and powerful drone fleet. Cannon. The name of the airframe seems to be Void Walker, right? The blond man slightly turned his head and looked at the handsome young man with short brown hair standing beside him. Yes, His Royal Highness the Second Prince. According to the information of the Second Princess Cornelia, it is indeed the name, and the drones around it are called Wing Fire 3. It seems to be a powerful weapon. The handsome young man softly replied, "Weapon?" The blond man called the second prince ponder for a moment and asked again, "I remember that guy Royd should be in Area 11, right? Has he seen the Void Walker?" "Yes." Royd sent back a report. According to his speculation, if the Britannia Empire and the owner of the Void Walker are in conflict, the defense forces of the Britannia Empire will be destroyed in a week. A week? The reply of the handsome young man didn't surprise the blond man. On the contrary, he felt that Royd's speculation was too conservative. Sure enough, it's like the power of God. The blond man recalled something that the current emperor of the Holy Britannia Empire indulged in day and night. While he was thinking, the luxury airliner separated from the formation of the Voidwalker and the Wing Fire 3 drones and slowly landed on the runway. "Let's go. Let's welcome the most distinguished guest of our empire so far." In the sky, the Void Walker, with a beautiful and mysterious body, led the Wing Fire 3 drones to hover over the airport for a long time, which surprised the nobles. The moment the door of the luxury airliner opened, the eyes of the nobles were immediately attracted. As the only princess of the Britannia Empire rolling on the battlefield, Cornelia was already criticized by many die-hard nobles. But at this time, the girl standing next to Cornelia shocked the nobles even more. Her long black hair was gently draped over her shoulders, and under her bangs was a beautiful face that made many noble madams and young ladies who boasted of their beauty pale in comparison. However, under this heaven-shaking appearance was a tight-fitting man's suit. At this moment, everyone present seemed to have fallen into a state of androgynous confusion. The beautiful face was still beautiful, but under the contrast of the fitting man's suit, it made people think that the one standing next to Cornelia was a peerless, handsome man, and not the mysterious, beautiful girl mentioned in the notice. "Beautiful young lady. Hello. I am the second prince of the Britannia Empire, Sconazel EI Britannia. Welcome to our Britannia Empire." Although the blond man was stunned for a moment, his strong self-control allowed him to quickly react. "Hello, Your Royal Highness, the second prince. I am Mimi." The mysterious, beautiful girl in the man's suit looked left and right at the nobles behind the blond man and couldn't help but frown. "The situation is urgent. I don't want to waste too much time on unnecessary matters. Your Royal Highness, the second prince, you should know what to do." "Understand." Cannon. The second Prince Sconazel ordered his subordinates to inform the nobles, and then invited Mimi to sit in a car parked on the other side. "Cornelia, come with us." This so-called welcoming party wasn't held as the nobles expected. Instead, after a short meeting, Sconazel personally led the convoy and escorted the mysterious, beautiful girl out of the airport. Therefore, the nobles who participated in this short welcoming party didn't expect that after the convoy left the airport, they would drive towards a mysterious underground facility on the outskirts of the imperial capital. Rumble. The huge steel door that separated the mysterious underground world from reality slowly opened. Following the opening of the huge steel door, the huge stone sculpture of a ferocious beast that was deeply buried in this underground world could finally see the light of day again. It really was hidden here, the lost long-fanged lion. Mimi's eyes flashed with a sharp light. Chapter 52. It had a ferocious appearance and sharp claws. These were the first impressions that the photo on the table presented. Obviously, the moment he saw the statue in the photo, Ray Minkai knew that the huge lion statue in the photo was definitely related to the White Cat State Zero. Royd, where did you get this? Ray Minkai lowered his eyes and asked after a moment of silence. Royd laughed, spread out his hands, and shook his head. This is all thanks to you, the top student of the Royal Knight Academy, Ray Minkai. It was rare for Royd to call out Ray Minkai's real name for the first time ever since Ray Minkai put on the mask. Me? Ray Minkai seemed to have guessed some key points. Yes, Royd did not let Ray Minkai wait for long, but directly told the truth. Just as I said earlier, I got this photo because of your performance at the conference. And the person who gave this photo to me was His Majesty the Emperor of the Britannia Empire. His Majesty the Emperor? Not only Ray Minkai, but even Cecil, who was standing at the side, was surprised. Yes, His Majesty the Emperor. Royd pushed his glasses, organized his thoughts, and continued, I don't know why His Majesty the Emperor gave this photo to me, but since this photo was handed to me, there would be a set of data sent to my mailbox through the Royal Secret Channel every once in a while. How come I didn't know? Royd, I'm in charge of your mailbox. Cecil subconsciously retorted. Royd shrugged and spread out his hands. If the email through the Royal Secret Channel could be seen by anyone, I'm afraid that His Majesty the Emperor would definitely execute the entire security department in the next minute. Upon hearing that, Cecil became silent. Okay, back to the topic. Ray Minkai, this is the condition that His Majesty the Emperor agreed to let you be Lancelot's test pilot. Of course, this is only a deal between His Majesty and me. Royd's confession made Ray Minkai come to a realization. Why are you telling me now? Because we have reached a point where we don't have to hide anymore. Royd smiled. Of course, this is just my one-sided opinion. As he spoke, Royd reached out and pressed a few buttons on the electronic screen on the table, changing it from an electronic map to a data table. He then pointed at the data table and said, This is the data that was sent through the royal family's secret channel in the past few days. Although it didn't mention where it came from, I have a guess. State Zero. Ray Minkai voiced out Royd's guess. Yes, State Zero. Royd nodded and continued to swipe his finger on the screen, opening a video. He pointed at it and said, This is the battle video that we extracted from Lancelot's battle record. Isn't this the White Beast? That is indeed me. At this time, White Cat State Zero appeared again. No one knew how it appeared. They only knew that when its voice sounded, it was squatting on Lei Minkai's left side, looking up at Lei Minkai as it spoke word by word. This is my body. Do you want a body back? Royd's eyes flashed, and a devilish smile appeared on his face. No. White Cat State Zero ignored Royd's goodwill once again. Now is not the time. Suddenly, the door was slammed open. Veretta's slightly flustered face appeared in front of everyone. Okay. Emergency situation. There's a rebellion in Kyushu. What? Royd and Cecil exclaimed. Ray Minkai's face changed and said in a deep voice, China Federation? However, Veretta shook her head. No, it's not China Federation. It's the Abyss form that he Mimi mentioned. A few hours ago, a rebellion suddenly broke out in Kyushu. According to the preliminary observation of the aerial reconnaissance forces, there were a small number of organisms similar to the Abyss form among the rebels. Abyss form? Ray Minkai frowned. What's the situation now? Almost all of Kyushu has fallen. Now, except for a few docks near Honshu, all the other cities are under the control of the rebels. Veretta's face became more and more serious. The information that she said made everyone's face turn solemn. You really picked the right time. Our Valkyrie governor has just brought the guests back to her country. The remaining deputy governors are working hard, but Royd did not continue. But Ray Minkai knew what he meant. Veretta, carry out the mission according to the original plan for the time being. I'm going to see the deputy governor. Ray Minkai's swift and decisive action made Veretta stunned. Now. Veretta looked at the time subconsciously. It was now 2 in the morning. According to Euphemia's schedule, she should be asleep. Moreover, the governor's mansion was not something that Ray Minkai could barge into. However, Lei Minkai nodded his head with a determined expression. Yes. Now, when the governor left, he had already entrusted the deputy governor and me to deal with the abyss form. Now, it's an emergency situation. We can't care so much. After that, Ray Minkai reached out and picked up the white cat, State Zero, and let it lie on his shoulder. He strode out of the command vehicle and asked someone to send him to the governor's mansion. Kyushu Island has fallen? It seems that the world is going to change dramatically. Royd put away the photo on the table and said to himself, the news of the fall of Kyushu Island not only reached Ray Minkai's ears, but also the governor's mansion. As Ray Minkai said, it was an emergency situation. Although Euphemia was just an inexperienced princess in the eyes of the aristocratic officials in the 11th district, no one dared to hide it under this emergency situation. Otherwise, the current emperor who respected power and violence would definitely make them drink a pot of wine. Therefore, even when Euphemia was already asleep, the panicked aristocrats had to force the maids to wake Euphemia up and inform her of this emergency situation. Euphemia, whose consciousness was still fuzzy after hearing the maid's retelling, also issued the order to pass this emergency situation back to her country and to Cornelia's ears. No, Prime Minister, I have to return to the 11th district immediately. Euphemia has no way to deal with the fall of Kyushu Island. What's more, the enemies she will face are not only humans. Cornelia, who heard the news, had just stepped out of the door when she was stopped by Scanazel, who rushed over. Calm down, Cornelia. Now is not the time to panic. Missy, you say it. After Scanazel stopped Cornelia, he stepped back and gave the right to speak to Himimi, who was following behind. Her Highness Cornelia, now is not the time. Himimi, who was still wearing a man's suit, shook her head and said, why, there is no way to deal with the sudden rebellion by relying only on the military strength of the 11th district. Only with me, my personal guards, Euphemia has the ability to deal with the rebellion of Kyushu Island. Cornelia's face became more and more anxious. Perhaps, only when facing Euphemia in a dangerous situation, the invincible Her Highness would show her fragile side. Although Himimi appreciated this side of Cornelia, she still shook her head and refused Cornelia. No, Her Highness, the 11th district is not without the power to fight against those abyssal bodies. Don't forget, the 11th district still has that Mass Knight. Mass Knight? Okay, but he is just one person. How is it possible for a single person to contend against an entire army? Speaking until here, Cornelia couldn't help but be speechless. The tomboy standing in front of her was a girl who could fight against the entire empire. The enemy is testing me. Just as I know that they are lurking in this world, they also know that I have been in contact with your Britannia Empire. Therefore, they made a move. The enemy lurking in the dark. Cornelia clenched her fists tightly. After struggling for a while, she couldn't help but say, I know. Prime Minister, do you have a plan? Yes, it has been found in your mailbox. Schnetzel said unhurriedly. I know. Then, before returning to the 11th district, I need some time to calm down. Understood. Except for the information related to the 11th district, I will help you decline other things. Schnetzel nodded. Please. After saying that, Cornelia turned around and returned to the room. After the corridor became quiet again, Schnetzel looked back at the tomboy next to him and asked, Missy, is that enough? Himimi nodded. That is enough. All that is left is to wait for their appearance and the lion's awakening. Schnetzel didn't know that Himimi, who maintained a spectating attitude on the surface, had already adjusted her warship Demonis to the synchronous orbit, which was the sky above Kyushu Island, and was always paying attention to the island's every move. At around 5 o'clock in the morning, the order signed by the second prince of the Britannia Empire, the Prime Minister of the Empire, finally reached the 11th District Governor's office, Euphemia's hands. Sirs, the reply from the Empire has arrived. After quickly reading the order, Euphemia raised her head and looked at the nobles who seemed a little chaotic after hearing the news. Really? Deputy Governor, please speak. As if they found their backbone, most of the nobles quieted down. Due to the tight situation on all fronts, the 11th District is ordered to first send troops to recover or resist the rebellion in Kyushu Island. After all fronts have eased, the Empire will send troops to support. After Euphemia finished reading the order from the Empire, she handed it to the maid on the side and let her pass it to the nobles. How can it be? The Empire won't send reinforcements? With the current strength of the 11th District, it is impossible to deal with the rebellion in Kyushu Island. That's right. What's more, there is still the Black Knight Regiment and the Liberation Front. If we rashly use the strength of the 11th District, I'm afraid it will cause a backlash. Many nobles kept whispering. Some of them didn't care about Euphemia and loudly said their thoughts. In the face of this situation, Euphemia clearly knew that if she wanted to make these nobles quiet down, she must show enough courage to convince them. Everyone, just when Euphemia wanted to speak, the door was suddenly pushed open. The sound of the door being violently pushed open made the nobles gathered here immediately shut their mouths and looked at the door, looking at the masked knight standing there. It's him, K from Department Q. As soon as they saw the silver mask that made the nobles resentful, their eyes either showed a fierce light, or a calm expression, or a playful smile, waiting for the masked knight's next move. Ta-ta! The masked knight, Rei Mingkai, walked into the room without saying a word, walked through the nobles without changing his expression, and walked to the front of Euphemia's desk. He clenched his right fist, held it flat in front of his chest, and slightly bowed. Deputy Governor, all the Britannia soldiers in the 11th District are ready. As soon as the Deputy Governor gives the order, we can immediately attack and quell the rebellion. What? The Deputy Governor ordered the army to be ready to move out early in the morning? Rei Minkai's words once again ignited the nobles' thoughts. Under the gaze of the nobles, the third princess, who was regarded as a vase in the past, nodded with a serious expression and said rather majestically, "Very good. Kay, you've done well. I believe Department Q is ready to be the vanguard, right?" "Yes, Your Highness," Rei Minkai responded. Then, in the name of the third princess of the Britannia Empire, the Deputy Governor of the 11th District, Euphemia Libertania, I declare that I will personally go to war as a part of this rebellion. Your Highness, Deputy Governor, you can't. Euphemia's sudden attack made the nobles panic, and they hurriedly dissuaded her. Can't. Then, who is willing to go to the front line for me to supervise the battle? Euphemia scolded. Her delicate little face was full of determination. The nobles were suddenly speechless. Euphemia shook her head and turned back to look at Lei Minkai. She enunciated each word clearly. Kay, don't worry. Although it's a bit difficult, I still want to ask you a question. Please ask. Your Highness, Rei Minkai responded. Kay, are you willing to be my knight? In this state of emergency? This time, Rei Minkai did not refuse. He softly responded, Yes, Your Highness. Chapter 53. The wind was howling, and the waves were getting higher and higher, causing the warships that were hovering in the waters northwest of Fukuoka City to sway back and forth, making the soldiers hiding in the warships quite uncomfortable. But even so, the people standing on the opposite side of these warships were even more uncomfortable, because they knew that in this increasingly bad weather, if the warships hovering in the waters near Fukuoka City were still unwilling to withdraw to their ports, it meant that their enemy, the Britannia Empire, was determined to annihilate them in one fell swoop. Suddenly, a burst of hurried footsteps broke the silence of the fully enclosed observation deck. Dr. Zasali, Zawasaki-sama requests your presence. A young soldier in an old neon military uniform stood in the observation deck and saluted the man and woman who were looking at the howling sea. Oh, Zawasaki-sama is finally willing to see us? The man in the white coat smiled and walked out of the observation deck with the beautiful nurse who was always inseparable from him. Just as they were about to leave the observation deck, the young soldier suddenly said, "Dr. Zasali." Zawasaki-sama also said something. Zasali stopped. "Oh, what is it?" "Yes. Zawasaki-sama is very satisfied with the hope that the doctor has provided." The young soldier shouted. "Hee hee. Is that so? It's good that Zawasaki-sama and the other companions are satisfied." "Phyllis." Sisali smiled and shot a glance at the beautiful nurse beside him. The beautiful nurse nodded slightly and took out a small box from her waist pocket and handed it to the young soldier. The young soldier took a look and took the small box from Phyllis's hand with shining eyes. He bowed to Zasali and the nurse again and again. Zasali waved his hand indifferently and led Phyllis along the aisle to the office of Atsushi Sasasama, the leader of the major resistance organizations in Kyushu who had successfully occupied Kyushu. While walking, the beautiful nurse's face suddenly showed a hesitant look, which made Zasali, her longtime partner, somewhat surprised. "Phyllis, if there's a problem, you might as well say it." Phyllis lowered his eyes and said slowly, "Doctor, why do you have to make such an arrangement? Since the princess has discovered us, shouldn't we immediately evacuate from this world?" Hearing this, Zasali chuckled a few times. Yes, just as Phyllis had said, even though they possessed the technology to trigger the abyssal body, it was still not enough to compete with the daughter of the pioneer who had risen to fame in recent years. Not to mention, behind this noble princess, there was her father, a pioneer who controlled several dimensional universes, supporting her. Under such circumstances, their retreat was indeed the most rational choice. However, Zasali did not think so. "Phyllis, do you still remember what the princess said to us when we first met?" Chisali asked in return. "What she said when we first met?" The glamorous nurse thought for a moment, and her electronic brain immediately replayed the situation in full detail. "Mission. That princess's initial mission wasn't us, but someone else. Her. Our princess, for the princess of the princess. In the end, Her Highness's target is someone else." A confident smile gradually appeared on Zasali's lips. "Moreover, according to my speculation, the princess is probably locked on her mission target. Therefore, before leaving this world, I still want to find out who can make Her Highness come to this world in person." Sisali had never been stingy in sharing his opinions with his inseparable partner. "Is that so? I see. Then, before your goal is completed, I will do my best to protect you. But I also said that I want to warn you. Never underestimate the daughter of the pioneer, Himimi. You know, too much curiosity is often the beginning of a disaster." The beautiful nurse's face became very solemn. "Even if I summon my rose sword, it can't compete with the princess's fire phoenix." Zasali nodded and said with a smile, "Of course, I know this. No matter who it is, they can't underestimate the power of a super life form that combines the bloodline of the pioneers and the power of the Milky Way songstress." At this point, Dr. Zasali's plan came to an end. Next, Zasali and Zasali had to face their client this time, Atsushi Sawasaki. Click! As the door opened, a middle-aged man in an old neon bureaucratic uniform appeared in front of Zasali and Zasali with his subordinates. Zasali's eyes looked over everyone's shoulders and fell on the camera equipment that was collected by the other soldiers one by one, as well as the many KMF bodies parked on the platform on the other side. It was not difficult to see that before they arrived, there was an exciting announcement broadcast here. "How exciting, Zasali! Master Zazaki!" Sisali retracted his gaze and turned his attention back to the middle-aged man in the lead. "Yes, Dr. Zasali. From today onwards, our neon will once again stand on this land. From today onwards, we will abandon that shameful number, District 11, and in the days to come, we will exact our revenge on the barbaric, evil Britannia Empire." The middle-aged man called Atsushi Sawasaki raised his arms and shouted. Then, he lowered his arms and looked at Zasali with gratitude. "Dr. Zasali, It was all thanks to your gift that our long-cherished wish was able to come true. Here, I represent the entire Neon to thank you." After that, Atsushi Sawasaki led everyone to bow to Zasali and Zasali. "No, no, no. Zasali-sama. This is just a small matter." Zasali shook his head and sighed. "You have to know, back in Narita Lianshan, I had already provided this power to Major General Kates. Unfortunately, Major General Kates did not trust me, causing this power to go out of control." Zasali's sigh reminded Atsushi Sawasaki of the intense battle at Narita Lianshan. No, to the people of this world, it was no doubt a legendary battle. Because of this battle, when Zasali and Zasali met, Atsushi Sawasaki decided to accept Zasali's gift. Major General Kates was unquestionably an outstanding soldier. However, in a special situation, he was unable to do so. After Sawasaki Atsushi commented on Major General Kates' death, he signaled to his subordinates with his eyes. The attendant immediately took out a document from the briefcase in his hand and respectfully handed it to Zasali. "Dr. Zasali, according to your request, I have already filtered the information of our personnel. There are only 2 people who fit your requirements." The follower's tone became even more respectful. Anyone who had witnessed with their own eyes how Zasali's technology increased their combat strength would treat Zasali as an esteemed guest. "Oh, only 2. That's out of my expectations." Zasali was slightly surprised. According to his request, this exile organization that was suppressed by the world's most powerful Britannia Empire actually managed to find 2 people who fit his requirements. This was truly a pleasant surprise. He flipped open the document, and a headshot of a young man with typical East Asian looks appeared in front of him. Suzaku? Oh, the son of the former prime minister? Interesting." Zasali flipped to the next page. What appeared in front of him was a young girl with a typical mixed-race face. "Karen? Uh-huh. Isn't this the trump card of the Black Knight?" "Yes. If Dr. Zasali is interested in her, I will send someone to contact the Black Knight." Facing Zasali's question, Atsushi Sawasaki immediately answered. "No." Zasali shook his head, closed the document, and continued. Suzuku is fine. Sawasaki-sama, you should have already brought him to this base, right?" "Of course. As the son of the former prime minister, Suzuku has the obligation to contribute to the revival of Japan. What's more, he bears a sin that must be redeemed." Atsushi Sawasaki seemed to have some opinions about Suzuku. When he reached the latter part of his sentence, Zasali could clearly feel the rising anger in Atsushi Sawasaki's heart. However, to him, this was not worth paying attention to. "That's it, Sawasaki-sama. If you're ready, you can send into my operating room." Atsushi Sawasaki nodded, raised his right hand, and motioned for another attendant to step forward, then pointed at him and said, "Dr. Zasali, this is Warrant Officer Shimano Richiro. He's responsible for assisting Dr. Zasali in all aspects." "Uh-huh. Thank you very much." With the end of this short conversation, the storm hovering over Kyushu Island seemed to become more and more intense. Above the ninth heaven, a new battleship that had just been put into practical use was slowly cruising through the clouds. It set off from the Tokyo concession and headed for Kyushu Island. "This is the floating system designed by Royd?" Ray Minkai stood on the bridge and asked while looking at the scenery. "Yes. Although this is a system designed by me, I'm also surprised that it was put into practical use so quickly." Although Royd said that he was surprised, his face was full of pride. "Is that so? In this case, at least the safety of Her Highness Euphemia can be guaranteed." Ray Minkai nodded. Now, the warship they were on was a new light warship, Avalon, which was equipped with the floating system developed by Royd. This new floating battleship developed by the Britannia Empire, Avalon, in addition to being able to stay in the air for a long time, was also equipped with the latest energy light shield protection system developed by the Empire. There is no doubt that as long as the enemy's attack strength did not exceed the output power of this energy light shield protection system, Avalon would be like the legendary utopia, impenetrable by any external force. Speaking of which, Knight, how does it feel to become the knight of the third princess of the Empire? Royd stopped his work, turned around, and looked at the knight's sword hanging on Rei Minkai's waist with a playful expression. He remembered that the reason why Rei Minkai became K was because of the accident that happened at the end of the academic year, where the winner was rumored to be the knight of Her Highness. Thinking of this, the cynical Royd couldn't help but sigh. Fate was really a goddess that liked to tease humans. While bringing you despair, it also buried hope in the depths of despair. It's an emergency. I don't feel anything special. Rei Minkai didn't know Royd's sigh. Even if he knew, he would still give the same answer. Since Cornelia left District 11 with her night guards, the only person who could let Euphemia control the army of District 11 was Department Q, which made many nobles and officials tremble in fear. Therefore, Rei Minkai stood out and stabilized the situation. The knight's sword on his waist was just an accident, but it also represented Euphemia's trust. At this time, the door of the bridge opened. Accompanied by Sayer, Euphemia, who had changed into a military uniform, slowly walked into the bridge. What's the situation? As soon as she stepped into the bridge, Euphemia looked at Rei Minkai and asked, Avalon will enter the sky above Kyushu in half an hour. But because of the storm, neither Avalon nor the Navy of District 11 can launch an attack for the time being. On the other hand, the rebels who captured Kyushu can't launch an attack. After Rei Minkai briefly introduced the current situation, he handed the task of introducing the battle plan to the staff officers who came up from the lower floor of the bridge. Deputy Governor, according to our previous investigation, the weapons used by the rebels are roughly divided into 3 types. First, the old armored land vehicles and a small number of conventional naval warships. Second, the KMF body that appeared in the Battle of Narita Lianshan. Third, the abyssal bodies is suspected to have appeared in the Battle of Narita Lianshan. After the staff officer introduced the structure of the rebel forces, he continued, according to the analysis of the data of several previous battles, the biggest threat to our army is the abyssal bodies with unknown combat power. Moreover, according to the survivors who evacuated to various ports in the state, the abyssal bodies seem to have been used by the rebels as the main force. Abyssal bodies? Euphemia also experienced the Battle of Narita Lianshan, so her small face gradually became dignified. Kay, are you sure you can deal with those unknown abyssal bodies? I don't know. Rei Minkai shook his head. Although my body has been reassembled and equipped with the latest flying wing system, it's still not enough. However, we have no way of knowing the number and combat power of the abyssal bodies. Is that so? Euphemia nodded and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, Royd suddenly laughed strangely. That, Deputy Governor, I have an idea. Avalon is also equipped with something very fun. As long as this thing is used, it might be able to create an advantage for Kay's attack. Something? It's equipment, right? Roy, tell me. Euphemia's eyes lit up and quickly asked. Yes, it's a piece of equipment. It's also the result of my research. Royd pushed up his glasses. Its name is Strong Particle Cannon. Chapter 54. The storm gradually subsided. Although the dark clouds above still shrouded Kyushu, everyone knew that the natural storm had come to an end. And at the end of this period, a human-led storm would sweep across Kyushu. Woo! The sharp battle alarm sounded on the sea and quickly occupied the sky above the sea. The Britannia Empire's naval fleet in the 11th District, which refused to leave even if it was shrouded by the natural storm, also entered the final preparations before the battle. The deck was filled with nervous sailors walking back and forth. They either put on life jackets or checked the nearby equipment and carried out the final preparations before the battle in an orderly manner. In the center of the fleet, the amphibious KMF airframe Portman, which was developed by the Britannia Empire for underwater combat, was also placed on the waves. The frog-like Portman was waiting for the moment the battle order was issued, Then they rushed into the waves and launched a fatal attack on the enemy along the seabed. At this time, there was a rumbling sound in the sky. The curious sailors looked up to see if the storm was coming again. But the next moment, the sailors took off their hats and waved toward the sky. They saw a ray of sunlight breaking through the dark clouds, and a large black cloud appeared on the horizon. This was not the natural storm that swept over again. It was a black cloud composed of steel wings built by the most powerful empire in the human world. The more than 300 bomber aircraft group was already the Air Force Euphemia could mobilize. This also proved that Euphemia had great determination for this rebellion. Lieutenant Governor. The bomber group is in position and can launch the first wave of attack at any time. After receiving the report from the navigator, the staff immediately reported to Euphemia. Well, Kay, please. After Euphemia nodded, she looked back at Ray Minkai, who had already changed into a pilot's suit. Understood, Lieutenant Governor. After Ray Minkai performed a night salute, he looked at the staff and said, "We still don't know whether the abyssal body that appeared in Fukuoka has the ability to attack with light beams. Therefore, unless necessary, the bomber group will keep a safe distance and launch air-to-ground missiles at ground targets." "Yes, sir," the staff responded. Then, Ray Minkai left the bridge and went straight to Naku. "Okay, the flying wing equipment is ready. Next, it's up to your performance. I hope you can bring me better data." Royd looked forward to the reborn Lancelot. Currently, other than Lancelot's outer appearance, there were many changes to the other parts of him. The most important change was that in addition to the energy light shield on his arms, there was an additional energy light shield on his chest to resist the powerful light beam attack from the abyssal body. In addition, it had to be mentioned that Lancelot had added the flying wing system this time. With it, Lancelot had the ability to fight in the air for a long time. Looking at the entire world, apart from the mysterious girl, Mimi's Voidwalker and her Wingfire 3, as well as the KFM Gawain that was also equipped with a flying wing system. Were there any other humanoid airframes that could stay in the air for a long time? The answer was no. Therefore, in this attack, Royd had high hopes for Lancelot's battle data. "Leave everything to me. Also, I'll leave Avalon's defense system to you." Royd, although Avalon's energy light shield defense system is very reliable, there's no what if. You have to watch it carefully. Don't worry. After ending the conversation with Royd, Ray Minkai sat in Lancelot's cockpit. And in the cockpit, there was a small shadow waiting there. "State Zero, why are you here?" Ray Minkai looked at the white cat lying on the console with a slight surprise. I just want to get close to those disgusting things again." White Cat State Zero opened its eyes and looked at Ray Minkai. "Kai, be careful. I feel that this battle won't be a simple one." Ray Minkai nodded, indicating that he understood. Even if the white cat didn't say it, Ray Minkai had already felt it. Even though he hadn't received any information from Kyushu about Narita Lianshan's terrifying monster, Asmodai, Ray Minkai still felt that it would appear. Ka! As the cockpit door opened, the cold wind from the high altitude suddenly poured in, blowing the hanging buttons on both sides of Naku up and down, constantly hitting the outer wall, making a series of clanking sounds. "Okay, time's up. The bomber fleet has already started the first wave of attack." Seahill, who took over the communication, immediately sent the battle situation he saw in the cockpit to Ray Minkai. "Got it. Then Lancelot attack." In the blink of an eye, Lancelot jumped down from the open cockpit door. The moment he deployed the flying wing system, he stabilized his body, quickly rose in altitude, and flew to the side of Avalon's cockpit. At this moment, everyone in Avalon's cockpit saw Lancelot, who had deployed the flying wings and smoothly soared into the sky, and couldn't help but exclaim. As the designer, Royd was a little proud. For him, there was nothing more worthy of pride than his own work being praised by others. After Ray Minkai's gaze and Euphemia's gaze met through the screen, he piloted Lancelot and soared into the sky, following the traces of the bomber fleet. On the way, Veretta, who had boarded the Navy aircraft carrier in advance, also sent a message. Okay, now all the KMF troops in Department Q have entered the preparation stage for landing operations. Do you have any orders to give? Ray Minkai shook his head, indicating that there were no additional orders. The moment the battle plan was decided, Ray Minkai and Lancelot were destined to be a lone army. They would travel alone along the mysterious world island, Kamago Island, and finally land directly on Fukuoka City to launch an attack. Of course, Lancelot wasn't a lone army in the literal sense. The Portman force driven by the Marine Corps stationed in Area 11 cooperated with it. Compared to Lancelot, who was flying in the air and was an obvious target, the ghosts lurking under the sea could certainly help Lancelot break through one obstacle after another. Veretta and the others would be flanking Tsukamisaki, northwest of Fukuoka City, to launch a landing. But it was only a feint. Before determining the number and combat strength of the abyssal demons, apart from aerial bombardment, the only way to directly attack the enemy was to launch a frontal assault on Lancelot's side. Veretta, be careful. Although Department Q has a much better understanding of the abyssal demons than other troops, it's best to be cautious. Yes. Rumble. The sound of explosions came. Under the dark clouds that were gradually dispelled by the sunlight, the air-to-ground missiles fired by the bombing aircraft were like a rainstorm, roaring one after another toward the targets that had long been locked on. In the blink of an eye, the horizon was as bright as stars. Lancelot, who was flying at full speed, didn't care about the bomber group hovering over Kyushu Island. Instead, he landed at a low altitude of 100 meters and rushed towards the first mission target, the mysterious world island. Da-da-da. As soon as Lancelot appeared, sparks exploded in the woods of the mysterious world island. Dense tracers constantly drew fleeting trajectories in the air. Lancelot stretched out his left arm and activated the energy light shield. Dang, 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 dang. The storm of bullets shot from the woods on the shore roared wildly, but they couldn't tear apart Lancelot's energy light shield and attack Lancelot's body. In the blink of an eye, Lancelot, who had launched an air sprint with a strong posture, rushed over the woods and looked down at the anti-air firing points hidden in the woods. Lancelot, who was like a god descending from the sky, shocked the rebels who were controlling the anti-air firing points. Those with weaker psychological quality immediately turned around and ran in panic, while the crazy ones gritted their teeth and continued to control the anti-air artillery to launch a new round of attacks on Lancelot. However, they couldn't shoot any more shells. Boom! With the energy light shield in his left hand and the variable Vari's rifle in his right hand, he fired repeatedly at the anti-air firing points below that were attacking Lancelot. Boom! Boom! At this moment, the woods on the mysterious world island were violently shaken by the violent explosions. The frightened birds flapped their wings and flew high, fleeing this hell as fast as they could in their lives. Death! Death God! White Death God! The survivors who were lucky enough to avoid the attack fell onto the beach, their limbs powerless. They looked at Lancelot flying over their heads in horror. After breaking through the air defense net of the mysterious world island, Lancelot, who had flown forward for some distance, suddenly saw a series of flames rising on the horizon in front of him. This is an anti-air missile. Bomber force, defend against missile attacks. Ray Minkai narrowed his eyes and saw what the rapidly rising flames were. Rumble. In an instant, the huge bomber group immediately separated into several batches and spread out in the air in an orderly manner to avoid the missiles. However, due to the previous bombing mission, the bomber group couldn't complete the maneuver to avoid the missile attack in a short time. Lei Mingkai did not think too much about it. He immediately raised Lancelot's altitude. But just as he was about to pilot Lancelot to attack the incoming missiles, a dazzling torrent of particles suddenly tore apart the dark clouds above his head. In a barbaric and unreasonable manner, it drowned the anti-air missiles that were attacking the bomber fleet. Boom, boom, boom. In the almost dazzling red particle torrent, the aggressive anti-air missiles finally died halfway. Okay, continue the mission. The bomber group will be covered by Avalon. Later, Avalon will follow us. When Euphemia's head appeared on Lancelot's screen, her voice also sounded in Raymond Kai's ears. Yes, Your Highness. Lancelot lowered its altitude again and turned into a sharp arrow that rushed to the sky above Kamago Island. Although Kamago Island was larger than Sealed World Island and had more anti-air firepower points hidden in the sky, it was still unable to tear apart Lancelot's energy light shield. In the end, it ended up no different from Sealed World Island. The name White Reaper was spread throughout the rebel army in Fukuoka City through the survivors' distress calls. White Reaper, Sawasaki Atsushi gritted his teeth. Is it the KMF that killed Major General Keites in the battle at Narita, Lianshan? Yes. If the information is correct, it is indeed so. The White KMF's name seems to be Lancelot. Recently, it was piloted by Knight K, who established Department Q under the name of Cornelia I. Britannia. The follower immediately reported the information he knew. Knight K. Sawasaki Atsushi's eyes burst with hatred. A nameless person who doesn't even have a name? How could this be? How could our glorious Japanese army lose to such a person? Go quickly. We must bring down this White KMF, Lancelot. Yes, wait. Just as the attendant was about to leave, Sawasaki Atsushi suddenly called out to him. Sir, what are your orders? What's the situation with Dr. Chisali? Sawasaki Atsushi closed his eyes. Yes, I've already sent the pivotal vermilion bird over. Yes, go. In the depths of the Fukuoka base. Suzaku was being escorted by 10 armed soldiers. Let me go. Why did you capture me and bring me here? Don't you know the consequences of betraying the Empire? After being rescued by the Black Knight Squad during the Clovis assassination, Vermilion Bird, who had turned herself in again, was rescued by another mysterious force before she could await her trial. Suzaku didn't know who they were. She only knew that she was brought to Kyushu Island and forced to become a part of the rebel army. Now, even though she had repeatedly stated that she was an honorary Britannian and not a Japanese, she couldn't shake the will of the soldiers who had detained her for days. Instead, she attracted even more cold gazes and criticism. The strange thing was that even though the soldiers looked like they wanted to tear him into pieces, he still held back his anger. Until now, he was escorted to an operating room. Go in, Vermilion Bird. From today onwards, you will be the Prime Minister of the Pivotal Tree, the pride of the Japanese. Amidst the mocking laughter, Vermilion Bird was pushed into the operation room. Bam! A blinding light shone, causing Vermilion Bird to instinctively close her eyes to avoid the source of the light. Doctor, it's Vermilion Bird himself. A pleasant voice resounded from within the light. Then bring him in. You. Who are you? Vermilion Bird wanted to struggle, but found that her arms were tightly bound by a powerful force. She couldn't break free at all. Welcome to the Temple of Strength. Vermilion Bird, should you have the wish to change the world, this is the place to fulfill your wish. As the pivot with Vermilion Bird's vision gradually became clear, a middle-aged man in a white coat was looking at him with a smile. Come, Vermilion Bird. Let go of your body and mind. Accept the power you can accept. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.